This little song for my father does things that no other can do as I sing it to you. It has a rhythm and a rhyme that will fasten his memory in time as his beauty shines through. The essence of my father is hidden in the melody as it floats its secrets to your ears. Here the music sings, the rhythm speaks of the spirit of my father. We're very proud to be in his story. We sing this song for him and for you.
Are we ready? Okay, we'll be calling to order what is it today? The September 10th agenda of the Architectural Board of Review. I believe planning has, do you want to roll call first? Okay, let's start with roll call.
Here we go. September 10th. Vice Chair Moore.
Here.
Board Member Cunningham.
Here.
Board Member Six.
Here.
Board Member Watkins.
Present.
Board Member Wittash.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay. I understand planning has some words for us.
Mr. Chair, board members, we had scheduled today under public comment a ABR design guideline discussion, as we discussed last meeting. Unfortunately, it was agendized incorrectly. It should not be under public comment. It should be agendized as a discussion item to allow for the public engagement, as well as for us to even discuss it. It's just unfortunate that it was agendized incorrectly. So I know there are people here who were coming for that discussion. I would encourage them to speak at the general public comment at the beginning of the meeting as a way, because I know you would like your chance to speak, and that's what this is for. So unfortunately, it will be on the 24th, so we will be having the meeting. It will be agendized as a discussion item. There will be a section for public comment, and it will allow us to have a better understanding of, or allow us to have a better discussion of what we would like to see from future trainings.
Okay. Anything else? That'll do it. So we should move on to public comment then.
Correct.
Okay, any member of the public may address the board for 2 minutes on any item that is not scheduled on this agenda. I have 3 public speaker slips for general public comment. Okay. Well, let's start with Anna Gott. And Natalia, you're...
I'm yielding 5 minutes to Anna.
Great.
So am I now, so it's not on the agenda.
Oh.
Yeah, she was still filling hers out, so Bonnie Donovan was also yielding her minutes.
Okay, so
So the first thing,
6 minutes. Let me get the timer going.
And just a reminder to the board, this general public comment is not a time for engagement with the public comment. This is just a section for the public to be able to voice their concerns or any comments they may have.
Great.
okay.
Please.
Commissioners, my name is Anna Marie Gott, and the first thing I wanted to do was congratulate you on the discussion that you had. You want me to start over?
Sure.
Board members, my name is Anna Marie Gott, and the first thing I wanted to do is to congratulate you on the discussion that you guys had regarding 711 North Milpas. You really took to heart what we have been talking about, which is the compatibility findings, and really trying to look at how that project really fit in with the neighborhood. And I really have to commend you on that, and I hope that you really go back and look at those ABR guidelines, because they are really essential for trying to put a lot of these AUD projects and a lot of the new developments into the area, not just on Milpas, but around town, and make it look like Santa Barbara and not something that actually should be in Pasadena or in Los Angeles. The next thing I wanted to actually bring up was something that is on page 2 of the ABR guidelines. At the very top of the page, I wanted to read a paragraph, and it says, "These guidelines are designed to guide the ABR members and the public and are not intended to be binding in nature. Although failure to meet the guidelines can form the basis of a denial, for the design of a project, non-compliance with these guidelines shall not be grounds to invalidate any action taken by the ABR, or shall such non-compliance constitute a cause of action against the city or its officers, employees, agents concerning any matter." Well, one of the things that's coming up in front of you with regards to 711 North Milpas is that the project has changed. And I would argue that the project has actually changed substantially. Not only have you lost about half of the commercial square footage, but you've also really substantially changed the exterior design of the project. And I would argue that the PDA that was originally provided does not actually meet the PDA that you guys are trying to foist on the residents now with the current design. I would really urge you to look at reconsidering if this project design approval that was given 2 years ago actually goes hand in hand with the current project in front of you. I would argue that it doesn't. And that is really something that you should think about, especially considering on page 3 of your ABR guidelines, right after we start talking about the compatibility considerations and all of the criteria that you need to look at when you're looking at projects, such as, does it fit into the neighborhood? You know, does it actually blend in well with the neighborhood? Does it meet our general plan guidelines? Does it meet all of our ordinances, etc.? One of the major things is the ABR shall consider the objectives and available incentives of the AUD program when reviewing a project. Okay, for consistency with the project compatibility criteria and applicable design guidelines. The ABR shall make deliberative findings and fully explain how all project compatibility criteria have been evaluated. You have never done that. The only time the ABR actually looked at this project was at a concept review meeting. In 2016, there was no real discussion because you were not supposed to be able to make findings that day. It was an informal meeting where you made no motions regarding compatibility. So not only do you have a project that's come back that is substantially changed, a project that does not look like it even belongs in this particular neighborhood, but now we're looking at the AUD criteria here, and it says that you need to make these findings. I think that you need to really reconsider this. And because these guidelines are not binding in nature, that means you can go out of step. You can go out of order. And I would urge all of you to seriously consider asking for the city attorney to come to one of these meetings and ask them about reconsideration. Ask them if you can go back and actually look at the compatibility findings now after PDA, considering that this project is no longer, in my estimation, it may not be in your estimation, substantially the same project. I think that it's changed. It's gotten rid of half of the commercial. The space that is there for the commercial is very large. What is everyone yelling about on State Street? They want smaller units of commercial space. They think that they would be able to rent those out much easier than a large gaping, storefront. So think about that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, ask for the city attorney to come to here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Jose Arturo Gallegos. All right, 2 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. Jose Arturo Gallegos, native son of Santa Barbara. Last time I was here, I read these Architectural Board of Review goals, and just what Miss Anna Marie said, I totally agree with her. I've noticed, first time I came here, I've noticed the two drawings behind you. Well, that's the Santa Barbara I remember, growing up here as a kid. So again, I'm going to read what is very important on the Architectural Board of Review goals. A, to protect the historic and architectural qualities of Santa Barbara. H, to encourage high standards of livability of projects and safety of residents. And I pointed out, I feel that has to do a lot with, of course, with the congestion of traffic and parking issues. To promote neighborhood compatibility, as Ms. Gott said, that's I. J, to encourage the preservation of pre-1925 Hispanic styles of architecture. Again, that just brings back some childhood memories for me, from many of the old buildings that I remember. And K, to promote visual relief throughout the community by preservation of public, scenic, ocean, and mountain vistas, creation of open space, and variation of styles of architecture. These are very important. Now, as far as 711 North Milpas, I'm not happy about that project. I'm not going to get into it, all that, but I would like to see that as a pre-1925 Hispanic style of architecture, and also to bring it to 2 stories, because many of the old buildings there who have been grandfathered in been there for many years, they're all 2 floors, 2 stories. Okay. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe that was everybody. Bonnie, yeah, we got Bonnie and Ms. Party. Okay. Is anybody else here wishing to speak on a project not on today's agenda or subject? Seeing nobody, we'll close public comment. And we have a short presentation from the AIA regarding the upcoming architect tours.
Thank you, board members. My name is Chris Manson with the AIA Santa Barbara. and I'm here to announce the 10th anniversary Architect Tours event, which is coming up on October the 6th. And just want to give you an early heads up. I'll come back to you once more before the October 6th meeting, but before you see that little flyer that we've given you. This is a short little preview with some photographs, but this tour is all in the downtown area. It dovetails with the charrette that the AIA had recently, and it's all about rediscovering downtown Santa Barbara in how we live, work, and play. There are 12 projects that are going to be on the tour, single-family residences, some commercial, multifamily units. Some of these projects are pretty large projects and will take quite a while to cycle through in terms of, the walking tour aspect of it. I think it's going to be very exciting. And at each of these projects in town, there will also be that section of the charrette that happened earlier in the year will be presented at one of those areas. So, the public can get into that also while they take in these buildings that have already been built. Every year when I do this presentation, I always like to say that, this Architect Tours is a result of projects that have gone through the city's design review process. And I think it's good that while the public always has comments about what gets built here, here's an opportunity for them to actually walk these projects and see what has been built as they have come through this process. So with that, I'll just say that the public can easily go to the AIA website at aiasb.com, and you can click here on the Architect Tours link, which would, let's see, I click on that there. Well, that's going to bring you up to, let's see, losing it. Let's go back here and so let's see if it will. Okay, so here we are. So this will bring you up to anyway, it will bring you up to the Architect Tours, and there will be an area where you can see how you can get tickets. There'll also be a press release that you're seeing here on your screen now that will give you a little bit more detail and following up on my presentation. And then later on, we will give you in the next presentation a little bit more details of each of the projects. So that's it. October the 6th. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Okay. So we are going to skip item number 2, or correct. So we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes for August 27th. Does anybody have any?
I'll move approval.
Okay. Does anybody have any?
Mr. Chair.
Any comments? Yes.
Yes. On the last item, number 5.
5, yes.
3855. First comment, I would suggest that we study the location of the proposed mechanical equipment to reduce the need for cross-out screening and, say, perimeter parapet heights. I'd also look at number 9 is to add to it if feasible,
Feasible, yes.
logistically feasible. And then number 11, just to define that as the west utility yard.
Okay. Did you catch number 9?
What was number 9? The
number
feasible?
Yeah, after if logistically feasible.
Where's that?
Number 9, the eliminated of the flying roof over that northern receiving area. That would be my comments.
Okay.
Vice Chair Moore?
Yes.
On comment 5, I personally didn't think the parapets need to be eliminated outright, so I don't know if we can maybe say reducing parapet heights and exploring the possibility of eliminating if possible, where feasible, to at least give them that wiggle room. Because I think there is existing equipment up there that would, I think, put them in a hard position if they had to eliminate it outright.
Well, it says restudy. So I think that gives them the flexibility. We didn't give them a hard number to what to reduce it to. So I
Well,
think
is this-
they can come back and say, we need this height to screen the equipment based on the reality.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
somewhere along the line, I thought there was some concern about increasing the height of these parapets. They are tilt-up walls at the moment, I believe, which cannot be reduced. But I would think that the issue would be to stay at that height or, treat the parapets in a manner that would be attractive, rather than increasing them.
Well, I think we have to be careful about adding language to the motion.
Yeah.
We have to stick with what we actually told them. So I think by asking them to restudy those, we're giving them direction. And if it's not feasible, they can come back and tell us why. Personally, that's how I feel.
I concur.
Okay.
I think we need to give them the challenge.
Yes. Okay. Was that the only comments?
I had one other comment,
Okay.
Vice Chair Moore. Is the first item, the
Old Coast Highway?
Gold Coast.
Okay.
Comment number 3, do we remember what materials exactly that we wanted them to provide on the color board? Is there a way we can make that more specific for them? I personally don't remember,
I
unfortunately.
don't recall what was not included on there, but
Just provide all materials on the color board. All.
that would be better stated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. If that's it,
We have
a
a
motion to approve. We have Mr.
Second.
Cunningham, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No? Okay.
For the Architectural Board of Review consent agenda for September 4th, item A, 2904 De La Vina Street, was given approval of its review after final. Item B, 808 East Coda Street, was given project design and final approval with conditions. Item C, 242 West Alomar Avenue, was given project design and final approval. Item D, 514 East Islay, was given an indefinite continuance to consent. Item E, 314 North Soledad Street, was given project design and final approval with comments. Item F, 3805 State Street, was given approval of its review after final as submitted.
Okay. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
For the Architectural Board of Review consent agenda for September 10th, item A, 15 South Aliso Street, was given of approval of its final approval as submitted. And item B, 42 Broadmoor Plaza, was given project design and final approval as submitted.
Okay.
Motion for approval.
All right. Do I have a second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion approved. Okay. Have any announcements or requests by applicants?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
board members, Chair Gradini, I'm sorry, whoa, Chair, what year is it? Chair Tripp will not be joining us today. Board Member Watkins will be stepping down after item 2. And we lost quorum for 3 of our items, number 3, Stearns Wharf, number 4, 1062 Coast Village Road, and number 6, 415 Old Coast Highway. Those have all been moved to the 24th agenda. And to avoid any holes in the agenda, we have contacted the applicants for both 217 South Milpas, along with 500 Anacapa, and let them know that they will have a new start time. 217 South Milpas will be at 4:35 p.m., and 500 Anacapa Street will be at 5:40 p.m.
Okay. Thank you for taking care of that.
Chair.
Yes.
As I informed you earlier, I won't be here the 24th.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
It's on my little notes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I need to recuse myself for items 1 through 4.
Okay,
And then number 6.
okay, which have been rescheduled.
So I'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay. All right, any subcommittee reports?
And Mr. Chair, the first item would have to start at 3:30 since this
Okay.
agenda is to 3:45.
Okay. While we're speaking about subcommittees, has there been any action at all for these subcommittees?
Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware of. I don't know if that is something that the board has been doing outside of my knowledge, but I haven't been aware of any.
Okay. All right. Well, should we take a short
2-minute break.
3-minute break? Okay.
I think somebody.
Re-begin our agenda, and we'll start with 525 East Giannolli Street, which is proposal for repairs and maintenance to reactivate the city desal facility. The work on this parcel includes replacement of existing seawater reverse osmosis modules, refurbishment of water storage tanks, new landscaping, and access gate relocations. And this is a review after final. So, our motion from the last time was continue indefinitely to full board with the comment that the proposed titanium gray and bone white colors are acceptable as presented. If you guys could state your name and we can get into it.
Brian Demore. I'm with the City of Santa Barbara Public Works Department.
Okay, is that on?
Turn that on.
There you go.
Carlos Sanchez, the engineer for the city.
Great, thank you. So, motion was pretty simple. Titanium gray and bone white colors are acceptable as presented.
Yes, so when we presented, I think it was 4 weeks ago, it was just 4 comments, and the board seemed supportive of what we had presented, and we weren't asking for final at that time because there were some details that remained to be worked out, and we do have that now with this submittal. So that is evident if we flip to some of these other pages. This one here is the view from Giannolli Street, and you can see there's been, is that considered a vent or a fan
This,
on the roof?
It's both.
Both.
Basically, it's a fan. It's
Yeah.
a vent that it's a vent with a fan on it.
okay.
And if we flip to the other views, you can see the penetration details are now figured out with the piping coming out of the side. I think previously when we had presented that, all of that piping right here was boxed in by the cladding, but in reality, it's going to come out from the side.
Okay.
I think that's really pretty much it of
Okay.
changes.
Do you want to point to these on a plan of some sort so we can orient ourselves?
Sure. So this is the plan of the 3 MPD
Here's
units. Giannolli Street. Down here, the freeway
Up
is
there.
over here, and there are 3 installed units with room for potential expansion in the future here and over on this side. And yeah, these are the 3 units. The fans are shown. There's 2 on each of these. And the piping comes out from this side over here.
We're almost 50 feet back.
And just one other change as we were working out these details, and our contractor was trying to figure out procurement timelines. They were able to find a slightly different material for the roof. It looks nearly the same, but they're able to get that material on hand much more quickly. We have a sample of that as well as the color sample. Actually, it's just in the little brochure, right? I wanted to show that. It is this high rib HR3. Which looks nearly identical to what was presented previously, and instead of the bone white, what they have, which is the closest equivalent, is this regal white, which is probably a little bit less white than the bone white.
Okay. Did you bring that sample with you as well?
Bone white's right there.
Well, this is the bone white.
Great.
Can I see that?
This is the old, this is new. Okay.
Both the brochure and the sample. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that's the main stuff. That's it.
Okay. We'll open it up for public comment. Anybody here wish to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, we'll close public comment. Move on to questions. Do you want to start?
No.
Okay. David, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Okay.
The location of those fans that was added to the renderings,
Please.
is that the exact locations they have to maintain, or is there any play with where they could shift to?
I would say that there's probably a little bit of option, but it looks like they're centralized to the units. So they're trying to keep even flow through the units, ventilation-wise.
So it's not like they can maybe be clustered in each respective building to like a central point in the rooftop?
No, that I don't think we can do.
Okay.
That we want to keep the flow kind of uniform throughout the units.
So right as they pop down through the roof structure itself, they just have like a supply grill or something that kicks out the air, or is there?
I believe
ducting?
that's what the final design will look like. But generally, there's a little play with their kind of area, like where they're at right now. But in terms of clustering them, I don't think that's an option, performance-wise.
Do you happen to know, top of your head, what the minimum clearance is between the units that they can
No, I
stack
don't.
up against? Okay, that's my only question.
No questions.
Okay. Howard, how about now?
So I'm looking at plans here. Are these quarter scale, which means this building probably is maybe the shed portion is 16 feet, maybe, or is it?
The west elevation has dimensions on the heights.
The highest point of the roof is 14.6, with the vent sticking up to 16.6.
Yeah. Okay. And the height of the equipment on the roof is maybe, what, 3 feet, 4 feet higher than that? 3 feet?
It's the difference between those two dimensions, 14 and
It's
16.
2 feet higher than the highest point of the roof.
I see, 14.6 and 16.6. Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Let's go to comments. David, do you have any to start with?
I'm trying. I know it's industrial, so it's like just to pick hairs over the units on the rooftop. It may seem like a little too much, but this renderings that you provided, they look pretty visible. In 2 feet, though, and scale is not that large. So I guess in one hand, I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry. One hand, if you screen them, then it's less visible anymore. They don't look like eyesores. But then it's almost like because they can't be clustered together, you're going to have two screen enclosures that are going to draw just as much of attention, to the views. So those are my only comments. I really don't know quite yet what I feel about that. I'll listen, kind of get a sense of what the other board members feel. It's kind of my only nitpick right now is that, but everything else looks fine.
Okay. Richard?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I didn't ask before. This image is with the future unit?
No, this rendering that we hear from Yananali Street is with the existing 3 units.
Existing, okay.
Seeing this.
So my comment would be that if and when this one goes in, that it would be good if maybe technology will change by then, and there may be a way. I would be concerned if this same module came up that close to the Yananali site wall, given that it's already, this one way back here is already impacting from the image that we see. I would think that when we take this into, when that future unit comes about, that it will be sensitive and need to have some kind of articulation so it's less impactful than the standard unit module.
I think our anticipation is we would come back with the expansion plan, and it may not be that the fourth unit goes here. It's possible that it will be located back here. It all depends on what other equipment and piping and connections they need to make. We've been anticipating it here, but we don't know for sure, and that plan isn't in place yet. But we would come back to the board with those details.
Well, I'm hoping when in the future that the public memory will remember that concern. That's my comment.
Okay. Howard?
I am sympathetic to both comments. One is looking at this from the Yananali, these white roof-mounted equipment. I'm wondering if a different color might help get them to kind of go to sky color. And the other thing about the fourth unit being placed in that vacant spot there, that would present a visual impact from the street. And I think if that's the case, and there's no other way, we would be looking at landscaping or some other mitigation, serious landscaping there to mitigate that. It'd be almost worth it to say that if you can look at the feasibility of putting it in the remote location there away from the street, that would be not a condition of approval, but it would be certainly a comment that would go down on future expansion. But I have so those are the two concerns I have, comments I have.
Okay.
I don't know about how the board feels about what is sky color after all. Gray, blue, green, blue, green.
Speaking of grays, how's the board feeling about the regal white color?
Okay. I agree.
Could I once more look at that brochure? Thank you. I don't know. My eye is immediately drawn to pearl gray and pearl gray adobe. It's grayish.
Okay.
For the roof color and the equipment color.
Okay, I don't have much else to add. So is somebody prepared to make a motion? They are here for a final approval of these colors.
It's just the colors themselves.
And I guess the addition of these vents.
And also the casing itself. So the
walls,
and the roof.
So I'll make a motion for approval as submitted with the following additional changes to be made. Maybe on consent.
Okay.
That we see the rooftop vents be in a light gray. Would these be those material choices or a different manufacturer? So it would be something between these lighter gray.
It's going to be a metal, most likely, so it won't be this selection of colors, but
I think the current plan was to paint these to match the rooftop color, but really any color would be available to do that.
Yeah, so the color would be a lighter gray than the pearl gray, and darker than the, yeah, a little lighter than that. Between the rooftop and the gray here. And just a note for the record that the board is extremely concerned if in the future a like module is placed adjacent to Module C and closer to the Yananali Street elevation, that it would be significant impact to the Yananali Street experience and should be either restudied or relocated in order for it not to be so impactful. I think that was the...
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we want to
I'll second the
include,
motion.
well, before we get
I have
there,
some I have a little.
are we approving the roof material and
Yes.
the color?
I
guess you said approved as.
Yes,
yes.
approved.
Okay.
Mr. Chair and Board Member 6, I just wanted some clarification on the motion. It was approval with conditions, but you would also like to see it back on consent?
You did say that.
Yes, I did.
That's fine.
Do we need to see the color of the consent?
If you feel we do, that's fine.
Can I ask a question before you respond? What is the factory finish of those units?
Most likely a kind of a metallic, aluminized type of finish.
Shiny,
Shiny.
not good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Could we have staff review and approve a matte finish of a color in between the pearl gray and the white?
We can do that.
Okay, that's what I would like to
Okay.
revise my motion to.
Amend the motion to require staff.
If we just make it a condition of approval, the plan checkers will check to make sure that it's a matte gray.
Okay, do we have the complete motion? I believe we do.
Yes.
Second?
I still second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Matthew, do you need this?
So why are the roofs white? Because you want to keep it cool or something? In there?
It helps a lot. It's a
Heat,
it's a heat
build
lamp.
up? Yeah.
If you have no use for it, then they use one. Okay.
Okay, we are ahead of schedule for item 2, which is to be seen
Who
at
did those renderings?
4:10.
See, hear it now, but I don't know if they hear it.
That's pretty nice.
I think we need a few minutes.
I'll grab this. Let's just kick it over to you.
No snacks? You hoping for some snacks?
Just hit that button there. Yeah, this one. Okay, reopening the meeting for item number 2, 602 West Anapamu Street. This is proposal for renovations to Bonnet Park, remodel the existing multi-purpose field, existing basketball court, construction of new exercise paths, second basketball court, new picnic areas, and additional plantings. Project proposed to retain the existing playground, restroom building, and site lighting. Improvements are proposed to existing hardscape site furnishings and stormwater management. This is comments only. Project requires further environmental assessment. Welcome. If you could introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Justin Van Mullum. I'm with Parks and Recreation. I'm here with Ing-Yu Hung from SWA Group and also her associates Han Fu and Jenna Wiebe.
Great. Welcome.
Let me start off So Bonet Park is 3.5 acres. It's a very interesting park because it's bisected by Old Mission Creek. Go ahead. Old Mission Creek. It is the only park in the West Side community neighborhood. So it's a well-used park not only for recreation purposes, basketball, handball, and of course we have a playground as well, and we've got a turf field, soccer, but also for picnicking on the site. When we did our outreach, one of the things, we had a charrette on site and showed the neighborhood 3 different design options, lots of different types of new amenities. And what we heard overall is keep it just the same, just make it a little better. We want a better court. We want a better picnic area, bigger picnic area, and a better field. So we also, not only did we have the outreach, the community design charrette, but we also surveyed park users on a Sunday, went from person to person and got a lot of feedback there as well. And then we've been to the Parks and Recreation Commission with our design at a hearing. So those are kind of the things that we've done to get to this point, and we look forward to hearing your comments. I'm going to turn it over to Ingrid.
Okay.
Hi. So I'm going to continue with where Justin left off. And so we're going to flip through these drawings. So as Justin had mentioned, our site is really here, but the area that we are remodeling is really just this area. So Anna Pamu Street, San Pasqual Street is kind of like abutting our site. And so the area is kind of in question. It's this larger parcel. So if we flip to the next page, you can see this is the existing site photo, same thing that we had shown earlier. Really, the site currently consists of inaccessible paths of travel. So you can, it's surrounding the kind of worn-out field here. There is a path that comes from the corner of San Pasqual, and these steps are really, in poor condition, and there's no handrails, so it's really not designed to code. It's actually kind of a danger for residents to come in from this edge. There's an amphitheater that we are proposing to keep. We think it's still in pretty good condition, and it could, serve as an entry for the residents coming from San Pasqual. There's also a stairway here. Same thing, it's not accessible, it's lacking handrails, and it's not designed to code. And finally, there is a truck ramp that comes down to the site, and this is really for maintenance purposes. So it's way too steep for pedestrians, and also it doesn't look very pedestrian friendly. It's not inviting. So looking at these entry points into the site, it's obvious that part of the renovation needs to include the pathways and making that much more engaging for the residents. The second issue that we have heard from the community is that this field, they like to have it remain as multi-purpose. Although there are times they might be able to play soccer or other kinds of sports, but they want to be able to use it for, large gatherings, for birthday parties and whatever events. So although it's very worn out, so they definitely want to see this field being renovated and planted again, so it's green and beautiful. They like the existing playground as is, so there's really no reason to change it. With the basketball court, they want to have more basketball games. And these are just junior middle school basketball courts, so they're not super large professional type. But having more than one court so that different groups could actually use the courts together at the same time. So that was something that we needed to amend. And then finally, under these existing California sycamore trees, there are beautiful, picnic areas. But again, unfortunately, there aren't enough of them. And so there's constantly a shortage of picnic areas for the residents, and people are fighting to get a table. So a lot of comments were revolved around amending or adding more picnic areas in this park. So these are the three major aspects that kind of prompted us to redesign and focusing on these three programmatic elements. The existing Old Mission Creek is a very beautiful amenity, and so we are not planning on doing. We want to keep it the way it is. So all the changes are happen outside of this 25-foot buffer that's being shown here on this illustrative site plan. So if we go from the existing to the current proposal, as you can see, first of all, back to this accessible path of travel is that we are able to accommodate a 12-foot wide.
Can you just walk us
Sure.
through these first before we get
Sure.
to the proposed?
Yeah, this one. So these are some of the aerial photos that you're seeing. This is the existing park, showing the area of lawn that is in poor condition, the sycamore trees to one side.
Existing restroom.
Yeah, existing restroom that's currently there. This is a view looking back at the Boys and Girls Club, again showing the sycamore trees in the wintertime, and there is a beautiful mural on the wall that is very important to the residents. That definitely we don't want to, we want to keep it the way it is, and that's the lawn area there. This is a close-up view of the mural and the basketball court. That's very popular, but definitely, could use more for the site. This is the restroom. Again, has beautiful murals. It's lit at night, and it serves the function that it needs to provide. So we intend on retaining the restroom. This is showing, I think, it's the path, the DG path, along some of these areas that, again, some of this might remain, but some of these might be paved with more sturdy paving materials. Looking at the sycamore trees and the picnic areas below. This is definitely the picnic area. You can see it's a little compromised in terms of the amount of seating that's available, and some of the furnishings probably need improvement. And this is the path along the back side of abutting the Old Mission Creek. So it's got a nice riparian edge, and creating some sort of seating area underneath that would be really helpful. And let's see, next page. This is an access connection that takes you across the creek to the trails along the Old Mission Creek. So this connection will be maintained as well to make sure there's still access.
Where is that on the site?
I believe that's somewhere here, right? Somewhere here. Yeah, somewhere here, sorry, right there. So that's the access path. And that's showing the field that's very parched, the play field. So definitely seeding new grass and turf would be really good for the kids that use that area. This is looking at the ramp along the backside of Boys and Girls Club. That's an existing ramp that's right here. It's a path/ramp, and it's currently being used, so we don't intend on changing it. And this is an access for the residents coming from the other street, Anapamu Street.
It looks like,
Yes, yeah. So it goes continuous out there, right? So you could see the mirror right there. So these pictures show the existing conditions of the site.
Great.
All right. So if we go back to our proposed site plan, again, talking about the accessible path of travel, so we have created a 12-foot wide driving. It's for vehicular because it will require maintenance, this park, but definitely it's at a gentler slope of less than 5%. So we will not need handrails, and it's within the code requirement where pedestrians could actually enter the park in a much safer and kind of more celebratory manner. And as you kind of walk around the park, the field, typically the path is 6 foot wide, and the paving material is integral concrete, so it surrounds the park like that. And then we are keeping this picnic, the amphitheater area, the bathroom. On this side, we are proposing to take out the existing stairwell because it's just not very safe. And granted that we also need additional picnic areas for the resident, and it's a relative flat side at the bottom of the slope. So we are proposing to enlarge and giving additional picnic area for the residents, and so that families could actually use this space while watching their children play in the playground, because currently there isn't anywhere to sit while kids are playing in the playground. So these two serve similar functions. Bless you. And then as we go along the back side, here's the 25-foot setback for the creek. So we don't intend on doing anything within this area except for maybe amending the existing, bare dirt with mulch so that it's clean and it's nice, visually pleasing, knowing that there's going to be a lot of activities all around here because of picnic and family gathering purposes. All the existing sycamores will stay as is, so there will be no change to all these sycamore trees. In fact, we're taking advantage of them by creating additional areas and making them more organized, more planned out for the residents. These are gabion walls, which we'll see later. These are walls very short, about 18 inches to 2 feet height most, mainly to block the balls or any kind of activity from running into these areas as families are using this, and then there's sports activities going on here. And with this basketball court area, you can see that we flipped the configuration so that there's two courts that could actually coexist at the same time. And so it allows for basketball, handball, as well as futsal. And that's how it's designed to adapt to all these different uses. So that's really the basic modifications to this plan, to this park. Okay, so if we continue to the next sheet, this one shows the grading. Grading is very much kept as this, with the exception of this area being leveled off a little bit to allow for more outdoor use. And then the water drainage, majority of the water is draining towards the creek, so none of that would be affected. Potentially there might be some storm water filtration basins to help clean that water from the fields before it flows into the creek, and that's just something we want to consider for the environment. This sheet, next one, shows the paving materials proposed for the park. This is integral color concrete. As you can see, proposed concrete paving, and it's color concrete. So that's where this exercising loop is made of. And then we thought it could be some may be able to make it more decorative, so there might be some glass or color chips being kind of embedded in the concrete. Within the picnic area, we're proposing permeable brick paving. And so, again, water could filter into, through the soil, and it's more ecological. So that's these pink, not pink, but kind of salmon areas you're seeing here. And again, try to keep away from these the trunks of the trees, and keep away from the 25-foot buffer. For the play fields, it's coated asphalt. So it's basically an asphalt material that's graded very smooth and painted on the surface for different line work and delineation of zones. So that's what the basketball court's made of. Everything else remains as is. Okay, next page. This sheet shows all the different site furnishing, materials, amenities that's on this park. So starting with the walls, as mentioned, these are probably low, 18 to 24 inches tall max, and these are gabion walls that's made of galvanized steel wire, and it has ideally, if we could use cobblestones on the outside and then infill the middle with recycled concrete. Again, we don't try to reuse what's already taken out on site, and that way we don't have to ship out a lot of debris out of sight. So these are the purple lines here. So these are gabion walls. And then the fences, there would be new fence along here, streetscape fence, 42 inches wide, height, and these would be corten steel or some sort of painted steel fence. At the gate, it might have be something a little more ornamental, like maybe here, to just make this park more inviting. And then along the back side of the creek, there's this existing lodgepole fence that will remain. And then finally, there is the existing chain link fence along the creek side. All the furnishings here you're seeing, these are per city standards, so none of these are custom in that sense. So it's already been used by the city. It's very vandal-proof and maintenance, low maintenance, so we want to stay with that same group of furnishings. And as you can see here, these are basketball court and funnel ball equipment for that. And all the site lighting are existing, so there will be no change to site lighting. Okay, so then this sheet talks about planting. We want to use as much drought-tolerant first and foremost, if not native plants for this area, except for the turf that's going to be, again, per city standard, ideally, if we can. And then everything else should be low water and native. And if we were to do any changes to some of these border areas surrounding the creek, we want to go towards as much native as possible. So I'm not going to go in deeply into the species of plants, although they're really cool, but we could just kind of flip over. And then this existing trees, if there are new trees, would be oak trees, and then the existing sycamore and big maple, also native. Flipping over to the sections, so there's very minimal site elevation change modifications. Mainly this access path that we mentioned earlier, definitely smoothing out the grade. So as you can see, this dashed line here shows the existing grade that was much steeper. So by making it more shallow and more gentle, we can meet the existing elevation at the bottom of the path, but then again making this less than 5%. So that's the modification there. For this picnic area here, again, this is the dash area is existing, so it's not quite flat and suitable for outdoor use. So we carved it out into the slope a little bit and adding this gabion wall here, and then 2-to-1 slope back to the street grade up here. So again, that's very minimal change there. And then finally, the last sheet shows the perspective of what we hope to see when it's all said and done. This is looking towards the playground area. That's the existing playground here. All these are existing trees. The gabion walls here, picnic areas here, and then showing the field being renovated. This view is looking under the sycamore trees and the picnic areas and looking at the sort of different kinds of events that could occur there and try to fulfill what the residents are looking for in terms of the renovation for this park. So that's our presentation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're going to open public comment. Is there anybody here who wants to speak about this project? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. We'll go to questions. Howard, do you want to start?
You are not removing any trees.
No, we're not. No.
You planting trees?
We are planting. We're planting one or two. How many trees are we? 2 trees. Okay.
So 1 oak and 1 sycamore?
Yeah. Is that right? Or maple. Right.
So, and this tree is going to be planted as a little tree, or is it?
I would. Depends on. it wouldn't start as little trees. I would say somewhere like 48-inch box. 24 might be, 48 would be ideal since we're not planting a lot of trees.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so drainage. I see that you have a contour map, but could you just explain where the water goes and how? Site drainage?
Sure. Okay, so the water generally goes, if you see 59, contour 59, which is on the northern edge of this field. So generally, water drains towards the Mission Creek right now, and that's positive drainage. So with this new resurfacing of the turf, I mean, we will keep it as much with existing as possible. I mean, we do have to regrade it to make sure it's level because it's not level right now. But we might have a bioswale along this edge here where the gabion wall is to intercept that field runoff. And what you're seeing with the storm water BMP is where this water will be directed to some sort of filtration basin, and there is slope there, so we think we should be able to direct water to there and it gets filtered. Some of it might infiltrate depending on the soil type, but eventually that water will flow through the bank, through the vegetation, and go out to the creek. So that's.
So was it your vision and intention that the perception of this picnic area would be seen as one large
flat area?
Flat area, unbroken up and.
It would not be if you look at the paving plan, it's made of five groups of kind of collections of picnic tables. So it's it's a zone it's within one zone, but within that there's 5 smaller groups that are linked together, so that it allows for, first of all, the tree, to kind of exist without compaction, and it also allows for possibly a little bit of planting in between, so to soften that area under the picnic table.
And my last question is, what is the edge here of the tennis court next to the
this area here, right?
What's happening there?
Yeah, so this is a continuation of the path, the exercise path. So
Concrete.
Yes, it's concrete. Yeah, so it's meant to buffer the basketball field from the turf fields, to create a little bit more of a zone for the to kind of separate the two uses. Yeah.
So you show this retaining wall at the back here, the picnic area.
Yes.
But you say that's a gabion wall.
Yes. Yeah.
And so these are gabion walls as well?
Yes,
in
that's
the picnic
right.
areas? Okay.
Yeah.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Richard, do you want to?
Great presentation, beautiful. So let's continue on. The basketball courts are not enclosed, correct?
No, they're not.
Okay. In your site analysis and meetings and so forth, you're taking away this access. I'm just wondering if there was enough traffic there that you're going to get a dusty path no matter what. Is this something that was clearly a less traveled path, or is that?
Mr. Chair, we did look at this, and one of the biggest issues, of course, is equal access. So if you have a set of stairs, you need a ramp, and that's an awfully long ramp. We've had so many entrances to this park that are fairly close together that we felt like listening to the community was and what their needs were. This is such an important park. One of the neighbors called it an extension, their community backyard, because of the density in this area. So we did look at it. It just felt like it was going to take up too much space.
So it was very impractical to provide ADA in that corner.
Yeah, it was studied. It was impractical, and we decided to improve the fencing to stop with the.
Are you? So you are?
Yeah,
going to-
there is. Sorry, try to make. Yeah, the site amenity page shows the fencing.
So the fencing would come around the corner, and so there would not be these backyard dirt paths?
That is correct.
No, we'll make sure. Yes.
Okay, thanks. The use of the gabion walls, the logic there was, well, you know, I'm dying to sit on it, and it doesn't look like it's very conducive to sitting. So I'd like to have explained why that choice of materials.
Sure. Let me flip through to the gabion wall page. So the reason we're using gabion wall is because, first of all, we think it's more ecological, that it's porous, and over time, you know, there might be vegetation or something that it's more kind of loose versus something that's concrete, for example. And then, so that's one reason. The second one is that it's actually vandal proof, and we've used it on other projects where you can't really spray paint on the gabion wall because it doesn't grab the paint as well as something at a very smooth and shiny surface. So it's got that reason, you know, advantage as well. And then thinking that it's really used more as kind of a separation for the activities that happen in the field where the balls might be rolling into these picnic areas while people are trying to, you know, have their own parties or whatever. So it's just try to kind of delineate where the picnic zone is versus the field, the play field zone, and having just some kind of visual separation for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you approached the powers that be about bringing the restroom up to ADA, or has it been researched to the point where, because every project, no matter, you know, 2 months down the road, it always gets in trouble because it's not current. Has that been fully vetted?
Mr. Chair, Board Member 6, we have looked into that, what it was going to take. It is a separate project, and it is on our schedule. So similar to what we did with the ballpark, where that restroom will be brought up to code shortly after the ball field was finished.
Okay, great. And then my last question, on the use of materials, is this an accurate color depiction of?
Yeah, it's well, it's interesting because this is actually provided by a company called Shaw & Sons, and we've worked with them. Doesn't need to be the same company, but what they're doing is there's these kind of very fine glass color aggregates that's kind of mixed into the concrete mixture.
That choice of colors is.
It is that color. It's kind of
that orange and yellow and so forth is
Yeah.
what you get.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean it's something that we just thinking how to make this park a little more vibrant with the choice of materials, and so a lot of the parks, one of our previous projects actually used this material as well in some of these gathering, areas, more special areas where we know it's going to have more people and spending the resources in those areas. Yeah.
Okay, great. I would love to see a photograph of the install.
Sample.
Thanks, that's my questions.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize, we need to speed this up a little bit. We were ahead, and now we're behind. So if we could make our questions succinct, that would be helpful.
I guess one question was, is there lighting currently in the basketball courts?
Let's see. I think it's along this edge here, and there's no lighting in the middle.
Gotcha.
No.
Is any proposed on the courts, or is it just not a function that the park stays open at night?
Let me field that question. There is lighting on the building. It's security lighting. It's not court lighting. And all of the lighting within the park is more for safety, and so that's how bright it is.
Is the park allowed to stay open past sunset?
It is. It closes at sunset.
Okay, it does close. Okay. And then, let's see, what page am I on? L4, there's the images of the two different types of metal that's being proposed. Could you differentiate is it an option right now of one or the other, or are they both going to be used in different parts of the park?
You're talking about this and this?
Yeah. So I think majority of the fencing would be more of your standard, but the vertical rail fence. We're thinking at some of the entries where if we have enough good resources for this project, we might actually use something more artistic where these entries are located, whether it's ramps or stairs. So you might have one panel that is made of these, cut metal, artistic cut metal, and the rest of it being vertical rail. Yeah.
And then the improvements along the southern edge, near the creek. It's nice that there's a lot of, I think, focus back towards the courts themselves. Are there any benches or seating areas are proposed looking towards the creek?
Right now there isn't. The picnic areas are the seating themselves, so we don't have benches that literally face the creek. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the last one, or it's kind of a two-part. I think it's more about just maybe program and function. But is there anything proposed for like soccer nets on the fields, or are they just intended to kind of totally remain as open?
Soccer nets could come in as more like a temporary. If there's a game going on, we could put. Justin could add to that, but it is.
If that's not something that the city would provide, this is more of a passive field that's used for all different purposes. It's not a formal soccer field.
And then the last part, was there any discussions that either from your guys' side or from the local residents about community gardens or anything like that? I know it wasn't there before, but is that something that came up at all?
They didn't bring it up. I don't recall. Yeah.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, I have two questions. Are the number of tables along this edge equal to what's there now?
It's more.
There's more, okay.
Yeah, there's more.
And then I see there's really just one barbecue location. That's intentional?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the reservable site.
Okay, but there was no desire from the community to have any other locations?
We're looking at maintenance, and as far as maintenance, what we're going to do is we're going to provide an area for coals, but most of the time people bring in all different types of cooking surfaces, and really the space is what's needed.
Okay. Okay, let's get into comments. Howard, do you want to start?
I want to compliment you on your presentation. It's very clear, very quick to grasp in an instant, so it's very good. I like your ideas, conceptual ideas. I'm not totally sold on the materials and methods yet. I have a concern about the separation between the exercise path and the basketball court. I think that's going to be a problem with active play on the courts and people running along there, and you may want to have some kind of a separation, either a fence or a screen or some kind of maybe even landscaping. It'd be nice to wrap that with landscaping. Number two, I'm not entirely convinced about these gabion walls, especially in the retaining wall capacity. They weep. They are natural weepers. So I don't know how much retaining wall they do over time unless you have to put some kind of a barrier behind them. And also they're not inviting to sit on, as Mr. Six indicated. You mentioned that you were going to be regrading this playing field because it slopes about 3 feet across the width at the moment. So there's going to be some leveling of that. It's going to bring the ground up adjacent to the picnic area. And so there may be an opportunity for a retaining wall there with drainage behind it and to sit on.
Right.
I also think that this area, rather than having a long pavement, which is made up of these brick pavers set in sand, which of course are permeable, it nevertheless is hardscape uninterrupted. And I don't know, but if you had a 500-person barbecue, they would need a big area like that. But the predominant use of this is going to be neighborhood, families, and small groups. And I would think you would take this long area and maybe divide it up into a couple of places where you could let the water through and have maybe a little bioswale run through there into the creek. Natural, rocks maybe, and then it would divide these areas up into more intimate little picnic areas and maybe have a little barbecue in each one. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Richard?
Mr. Chair, I concur with Mr. Witosh. I would be careful about, I too see that something interrupting that long continuous thing, but I would be very careful. Whatever it is, it's very subtle, so they can have that 200-member party without tripping over a bioswale and so forth. So maybe it's just a change in material. It's more porous. Water runs through. The concrete paving material, I would hold a reserve on that until I see the real thing.
Right.
And I think that's my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, very nice presentation and very well organized and thought out.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the gabion walls, as I said in my questions, are, question the material. If you're going to go that natural way because of the positive environmental aspects, maybe there's opportunities for seating directly behind, in back of it, or facing the seating areas or something. Because I just see those screaming for, people to be sitting and kids running on top of, etc.
Thank you. Yeah.
I agree with that last comment. That kind of helps with I think not issues, but I think little improvements that could really benefit the project. But already I think you guys have really taken a lot of care into this. The gabion walls, I think some kind of top on top, surface top, a cap of some sort would be great. And then I look at other areas, I think along the exercise path that kind of circulates around the large court. I think there's more opportunities maybe for even informal seating, just boulders or little sections of these gabion walls. But I think if you're not using those areas to the south there, then I don't see a lot of benches or opportunities for people to kind of just stop, and if they're by themselves or walking their dog, to kind of just sit for a minute and use the park as an individual versus as a group potentially.
Could you tell me where this area is?
Yeah, just exactly.
Right, along here.
Yeah, and then I think that can even filter over towards, I noticed around the playground even, I have a little girl, and so, sometimes you don't want to sit next to the person that's already at the bench. It's just, you may want your own space or something. And so I think even a couple more informal spots, or maybe even just benches, could benefit that area as well for parents to really come out there and use that space. And I think there's maybe an opportunity for the creek as well, even, again, if it's just informal, a bench here or there, or just even a boulder, to allow people to maybe engage the creek a little bit, have a little, private space for meditation or whatnot. The materials, the concrete, those colors, the oranges, maybe if there's an opportunity to either match that Merlot color you guys are calling out for the asphalt, or even look at the existing colors that are there in the structures right now. I think that blue is really predominant at the bathrooms and that larger structure. That could be a cue maybe to look at. The orange is just kind of a shock right now, and I think I get what you're saying, that making that pop, which would be great, so I like the intention behind it. But if you guys can explore maybe alternative colors, I think that could be something to consider. And then lastly, I would just look at the access point. I get that 10-foot change in grade off the existing path that was eliminated at the, I think, northwest corner. But I think that also is kind of a bummer because in a sense now you have all the access coming to the east of the site, whether it's northeast or southeast, and nothing really for the people that are coming from the other direction right now. If there's a way to engage that potentially, I know you have to do accessibility components, but maybe there's an opportunity to integrate that circulation for the handicapped person, but also provide some seating elements. Maybe there's a way to kind of do double duty where it doesn't scream as much of just this long ramp that's interrupting the park. But I think if you guys can find a way to keep some kind of pathway there, whether it's along the central point where those steps used to be or off the other corner, but I think somewhere along that part of the park is kind of needing that right now because the other two access points are still being maintained. That would be the only thing I'd see right now that could be gained from the project, but otherwise I think it's moving in a really good direction.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I agree with the majority of those comments. It's a great presentation, great start. I guess I would encourage you to study your seating layout because you have this setback from the creek. Why would you consider adding more tables that are directly on that line? Mm-hmm. That way any use can kind of spill into that sort of no man's land, and then that'll give you, I think, opportunity to add additional tables elsewhere because there's a bit of a gap in here for actual use. Mm-hmm. And as well as over here, there's sort of some no man's land that could be populated, I think, with more furniture. And I like David's suggestion about, well, if you can't actually add benches and real formal seating in here, why not some boulders that happen to be the, bench height mm-hmm. or logs or things like that are more natural features that you could integrate into the project and really invite people to get close to this because it is a really nice amenity, and it's unfortunate that we can't really engage it because of this setback. I think the fence, for me, I like the idea of really highlighting the entrance points with some particular feature, but I would be cautious about these very sort of hard materials and that are not really present in the rest of the neighborhood. I think maybe more the lodge pole might be more appropriate along the street. It's softer, it's not as hard, and I don't know. And I think the gabion walls are very cool to look at, but I think need some more study as far as actual use.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple additional.
Okay.
One thing is it'd be great if you could lose the chain link fence that separates the two parks. And another one is, given that this restroom is a work of art, and I don't know who did this, but this looks like native population may have come up with that. I'm wondering if the gabions, if they were in fact concrete, and you'd say, okay, come on in and just paint away, get a mural. And that would become another piece of linear art or whatever. But I'm having a sort of a resistance to the severity of the gabions. I know where they come from. They used to retain creeks, creek restoration projects. So, but anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I have, and I can sort of start crafting a motion, but indefinite continuance, back to the full board. Thank you for the very nice presentation and the good start. The materials overall need further study, in particular the proposed concrete with the aggregate, I guess you would say, and the colors, study options that would be more in keeping with colors already found on the site. Study adding screening around the basketball courts, and that can be in the form of landscape or other objects. The gabion walls are not appropriate for seating, study perhaps adding a cap or some sort of seating that's attached to that, or alternate modes of providing those seats and barriers. Study dividing up the hardscape around the barbecue and picnic areas. Consider multiple paved areas or paver areas versus one single paver location.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Is that the brick paver area? Okay.
Study adding informal seating along the San Pasquale pathway and along the Mission Creek fence line. Study finding ways to encourage additional street art or murals on the property. Overall, the board is supportive of the proposed basketball court design, general pathway layout, and furniture as proposed.
I'll second that with.
Okay.
I'll second that with additional comment. David, Kevin, you forgot to restudy and soften the middle fence of the San Pasquale Street to be more neighborhood
compatible,
appropriate.
Okay. Yes, please restudy the fencing along San Pasquale to be more neighborhood compatible. So the board is suggesting lodgepole pine fencing with a combination of more elaborate fencing at the entryways.
I don't necessarily want to dictate the lodgepole. There might be another appropriate sturdier thing. So let's just say restudy.
Okay, you can say that. Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
Motion
you.
passes. Thank you.
It's all for you guys. To keep. That's yours.
Okay, it looks like he's got photos there, so you can take those with you. Okay, we have item number 5, 217 South Milpas Street. Okay, a proposal for a new hotel in the coastal zone. Project consists of the demolition of an existing single-unit residence and a detached 4-car garage, and the construction of a new 3-story and 37-foot tall, 3,398 square foot hotel. The hotel is proposed to contain 7 guest rooms, 9 surface level parking spaces are provided or proposed. Project will require Planning Commission review for coastal development permit. This is comments only. Project requires Planning Commission review. And we saw this as a pre-application consultation on April 9th of this year. Okay. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, before you begin, I reviewed the video from last time, so I cannot participate.
You cannot, or you can? Excellent. Excellent. Okay. If you could introduce yourselves for the record, make sure that's on. Everything is on.
It's on, yep.
Keith Nolan, architect.
Hi, Shelby Messner, I'm project manager and planner.
Sam Maphis, landscape architect, earth form design.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So, as you mentioned, this project has been seen once before in April for a one-time pre-application. This is at 217 South Milpas Street, a 7-room boutique hotel. And really, since our pre-application, the project has not changed as far as the program goes. The plans look pretty similar. What we've really tried to do was keep all of the successful items and the positive comments that we received, and then tried to address some of the other comments to improve on the project. And just a quick reminder here about our context. Again, we are on South Milpas Street. Would you put your hand in that tonight? Thank you. And if you want to look at our little map down here, we're adjacent to Highway 101 and across from the Hamburger Habit for a little location reference, as well as just a couple of doors down from Indio Muerto Street, where there's a new 4-story hotel that I think you've seen a couple times that's in the works right now. So starting off here with our site, just a quick reminder, since it's been a little while, the existing site contains a single-family dwelling unit, 2 curb cuts right now off South Milpas, and then just at the rear of the property, there's a 4-car garage. Everything on site will be demoed as part of this project. So moving down to our proposed site plan. Entry will be taken off of South Milpas Street, and we are removing one of the curb cuts, so we just have one main access point. We received some comments about maybe increasing our setback at the street level from our main hotel lobby. So you'll see that we have done that. We've actually got 20 feet from the street to our hotel lobby. And a big part of that was that our last proposal wasn't implementing the pedestrian master plan, which is required with new projects. So you'll see a new 8-foot sidewalk. We've got a 4-foot parkway, and as well as a 2.5-foot dedication, which allowed us to increase our landscaping right in the front here of the project and increase that setback. So going down the driveway, driving in, again, our front lobby here, an item that we can move further on the next sheets, but I'll just mention now that we received some comments on. We previously had a hotel room that you would drive under that was right at the street frontage. That has been moved to the back of the site. Again, that was we received quite a few comments on that. So just going down the driveway, we've got 7 parking spaces now. We're just meeting our requirement exactly. All parking is surface level. And we have relocated our trash enclosure. It was previously at the back of the property. We've moved that more centrally located, a little bit easier access. So it's located right here with the elevator and the equipment. This allowed us to grab some more landscape area right at the rear of the property. And then again, we've just got a loading zone here at the back and our required bike parking there. So now I will move on to sheet A12.
More.
As I mentioned, the project really hasn't changed. So as far as the floor plans go, we're not seeing a lot of differences. The biggest item is that this guest room number 5 has been relocated to the back of the property. So it's still at the second level, but it's come down quite a bit. You no longer drive under it anymore. So it's back at the rear, and we've really tied it in a little bit better with the rest of the hotel. We've got 5 guest rooms at the second floor and then 2 guest rooms at the third floor. They're nice, good-sized rooms, and the idea is that so families can travel together and have space, not feel cramped in a hotel room altogether. And I will move on to our elevation sheet, sheet A13. All right, and just starting off here right at the top of the page at the north elevation, this is the driveway elevation. Hotel lobby is right at the front, and the first thing I would like to point out is you'll see a dashed line kind of outlining the project. That's where the height was before when we came in last time. And you can see that we've brought the height down quite a bit. We did receive some comments that overall the height was a little bit too tall. So as you can see, we've brought it down quite a bit. And then also just at the front by the lobby, you can see where the front was stepped back quite a bit from the street. So we've got a nice setback in front there. And just looking at the west elevation, the street elevation again, just draw your attention to that dashed line. You can really see that the project has come down quite a bit. another item about the height. We had some comments about the elevator tower and if that could possibly be reduced in height. And we have studied that. The current height is the bare minimum that it can be for a commercial elevator, which is required for a hotel project. So the height that it's at is pretty much where it needs to stay.
Which one is that?
That's the central tower right there. And then at the street elevation, you'll see it kind of peeking up. And looking again at your street elevation, this element right here is that guest room 5, which again, it's now at the back, so you really wouldn't see it totally, driving down the street. But we had been asked to dress up the facade a little bit, add a little more details. So we've added a nice little wrought iron Juliet balcony with some French doors. Also, previously, we were asked to maybe thicken up the post that was supporting this and elevating that. So we've thickened that up quite a bit. And so I think it ties it in really nicely on either side to that building. And again, just looking at the east elevation, this is the back of the property. So we've got that guest room 5, that elevated hotel, and just the rest of the nice detailing. Very classic Santa Barbara style architecture here. And just moving down to the south elevation, again, you'll see that dotted line just illustrating how much that we've really taken this project down. And at this point, I'm actually going to grab some perspectives that we put together. So just taking a look real quick at this aerial, our site is outlined in yellow here. Hamburger Habit across the street, and as I mentioned before, Indio Muerto, that's that location for that 4-story hotel. Highway 101 back here. We'll start by looking at the viewpoint A, which is standing sort of in the parking lot of Hamburger Habit, looking back up at the site. So at the top of the page here, this is the existing single-family home, existing neighboring property. If you move down the page, you'll see our proposed street rendering, which this is with the new hotel in there, and you'll see looking down the driveway, and I think it really illustrates how well that this ties into the existing architecture and isn't overbearing in the neighborhood. If you take a look kind of at the corner of this existing house, you can see there's a view here that we've really retained. It's existing, so not a lot of views lost with this new hotel. And just looking over to viewpoint B, so this is standing sort of in between the Ice and Propane and East Beach Tacos, looking back down at the property. Here you'll see the existing street photo, the existing home kind of peeking out over those trees. And if you just move down to the bottom here, you'll see our new hotel lobby still, again, peeking out under those trees, as well as just a little bit of the second and third levels at the back. We've really, retained the existing mountain views you'll see on both sides. So I think these do a really nice job at illustrating kind of the minimal impact this is going to have, but how it will really improve on the street facade. And at this point, that concludes my presentation. I will pass it over to Sam to go over the landscape.
Thanks, Shelby. So we really didn't change a whole lot in our plant palette. Of course, the theme is Casa de las Palmas, and we are using palms as a main theme of our palm kind of court as you drive in, but we did open up the landscaping, as Shelby mentioned, to a larger space along Milpas. We do have an existing podocarpus, which is the street tree, which is quite healthy, and that is a buffer as well to the nice wide sidewalk. We have enough to plant a Phoenix reclinata, specimen, I think, multi-trunk, kind of adds some volume of fronds and volume of kind of a multi-trunk beautiful palm to this larger area just to the side of the kind of rotunda of the lobby. We're borrowing landscape as you approach the site from the south. There's existing Ficus benjamina and some very tall Washingtonias robustas, the Mexican fan palm, that actually shield and soften this side of the property, approaching from the parking lot of Aquaflow in this area towards the electrical supply house. But along the back is a concrete wall of that building of Aquaflow, and it's a block wall that may be 16, 20 feet high. We're planting Ficus repens on that, as well as Washingtonia robustas that'll come up in planters along the back walkway. So we're kind of creating as much of a tree volume or kind of green volume as we can along this backstretch. But it's pinched between the buildings quite tightly, so they're going to be very narrow, tall palms. Wrapping around to the backside, as Shelby mentioned, there's a larger area of landscaping. It's a little shady back in here, and the microclimate is kind of nice for the Kintia palm. So we're creating kind of a palm court. And I think from the street, you'll look down this long alley underneath that little portico and the openness of that elevated upper unit, and you'll see this green space back here as being kind of a nice visual and borrowed into the court of the entry for the cars, pedestrians. Along the north side, we have a row, kind of a colonnade of king palms. So we're trying to feature the beautiful palms in this inner area, kind of a consistency of these palms are going to be in the planters where we bulged out the planting in the driveway to allow for a nice planter spot for those root bases. Also along that north wall, we'd like to plant a Gruyia Caffra on an espalier, so we get a real green, flowering kind of transition from that property to the northern property that pops up above us. But again, there's nice views looking back at the Riviera. From this unit, you're looking back over the freeway, but it is a nice view to the mountains. These all have a nice view over and through these properties to the north. So I think we've landscaped it quite nicely. We have a little borrowed landscaping that kind of adds to the palm ambiance and creates, I think, a nice setting. So that's what we've done to kind of embellish from our last visit.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we will open for public comment. Looks like we have a couple of speaker slips. If you all could take a seat in the front row there.
Right.
All right, Natalia Gavoni. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and fellow ABR members. Can I use this too?
Of course.
For the first page. Is that- Oh, the first, sorry, color page. Here. Perfect. This would be great if it was an AUD project, but it isn't. It's a hotel. It's beautiful. The architectural style is definitely compatible for the east side. However, I disagree with the architect. It is overbearing for that area of Milpas. Even though they have lowered it, it's still too high, and it is overbearing. If you were the residents, the neighbor next door to this project, I wouldn't be happy, and I'm sure all of you sitting here today wouldn't be happy. It is still too high and too overbearing. I think they need to go back to the drawing board and lower it and make it smaller. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Anna Marie Gott.
Chair and ABR members. You know what? Natalia said it perfectly. This is a beautiful project, but it's a beautiful project if it was an AUD unit. Look at the size of the units. The size of the units actually increase the size, bulk, and scale of the project. How many people here believe that the commercial space down below for a lobby for 7 units is actually going to be used for check-in? I don't believe that any of you actually believe that. These are supposed to be unmanned, basically, hotel rooms. For vacation rentals, they are built with kitchens, they are extremely large and have living rooms. These actually more resemble AUD units with the first level for parking. If you were to actually look at that commercial space of the lobby is probably going to be turned into some sort of other commercial use. Or, you know what, maybe it could actually be turned into possibly student housing. Because if you think about actually how hotels are used here in Santa Barbara, you can go ahead and you can rent out a hotel room for a year, and you don't have to pay actually any TOT tax, and you just have to rent that particular unit out for one day as a hotel room, and that's it. And you could easily do that if you go ahead and rent to students during most of the year and rent to tourists on the weekends. So these units, I don't necessarily believe, are going to be used for a full-time hotel. It doesn't make actual sense to hire someone and actually put them in that commercial lobby 24/7 or even 8 to 5. It doesn't make sense at all. For that reason, you need to use some common sense. Use some common sense when you're looking at this particular project, which is 3 stories and is surrounded by 1-story buildings right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak on the project? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. And we'll start with questions from the board. Richard, do you want to start?
Yeah, first a question to staff. I understand the public's concern about these becoming long-term dwelling units, which would mostly impact the need for parking. How does one control that? It's certainly not our purview. We're looking at the mass broken scale and architecture, but is there a mechanism that happens that so this is used as a 1 car per room hotel?
Chair Moore and Board Member 6, I think what you're saying is it possible that a future owner could potentially do something that is not permitted on that site? And of course, we cannot look into the future, but if there was something done on site, we would have to start an enforcement case and abate that. So if this was converted to residential units, they'd have to comply with the parking standards, the open space, basically convert a commercial business to a residential use, similar to how you would convert a residential business to a...
They'd also have to have separate meters and
exactly
all kinds of things that would make it problematic.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you. I noted on infamous project up the street that they are dealing with a ridiculous high flood zone table. Has your flood zone, your base elevation been determined, and are you going to be able to happily put this on the ground as it is?
Again, Commissioner 6, they've only been in for a pre-application at this point, so they will be submitting a formal development application. And we have asked, because the area is the project site is in an area that has the potential to have high liquefaction and moderate erosion, we've asked for a geologist and a geotechnical engineer that will conduct a full analysis of the site before
about the flood
receiving
control.
any discretionary approvals.
I'm concerned about the flood control level.
It's going through the Creeks Division and also Building and Safety Division, so they haven't called anything out as of yet.
Okay. Well, that will be something on the horizon. You're just a couple more. So the adjacent property in the rear that's affected by this, when we move this window and balcony to the very end, is there anybody affected by that adjacent? And who is this? Residential or
Yeah.
whatever?
I believe it's actually all one property next to it that wraps around here, and these are residential.
Mm-hmm. So we don't really know how their privacy has been impacted by that balcony at this point? You don't have any material that would show us that?
No,
correct?
not at this point. No.
And then, is there any reason why this is a magic number here, the 7'6" for this setback in the rear?
Not anything particular. We were just trying to illustrate what the setback was right there from that.
No, why is it set back 6?
Trying to give some relief to this building back at the rear.
To allow some landscape.
To allow some landscape areas.
Okay, thanks.
Property.
That's my questions.
Bob, do you have any?
Can you review again the comparative height of this building with both the properties to the north and the south?
Well, as we don't really have a total illustration, I think that perspective helped a little bit. But this is a one-story next to it. And I believe we are at 1 story at the animal clinic next to it.
So you're replacing a 2-story building.
Replacing a 2-story, yeah.
A 3-story building. And 1 story on each side. Okay.
The south property line of the majority of the warehouse of Aquaflow's building, I think, is a tall 16-foot block wall, but it's still just a 1 story. There's not another story on top of it.
Yeah.
But
Is that the what's next door? Aquaflow?
Aquaflow, yeah.
In this big, more warehouse, flat-roofed area, Howard, yes, but then this has got 2-story elements throughout that area.
What is the use?
These residential.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. Howard.
Just want to verify what I'm looking at here. On sheet A13, we're looking at 4 elevations, and I'm looking at the west elevation on State Street, and you don't show any adjacent buildings.
We're not showing them, no, in these.
I would be great if you would show. And secondly, the south elevation, this is the Aquaflow.
That's why there's some flat wall spaces against that lot line to lot line building touching.
Right. So in this north elevation, we're looking at the garage openings.
Yes.
And we're looking at black, when actually we see through. Is that
Yes.
not correct?
That would be correct.
And then also in the west elevation, we're looking at black when actually we see through.
Yes.
And we see through on the east elevation. So it'd be great to get those see-throughs. And then this needs to be rendered as to what is happening downstairs. There is doors and elevators and things going on in that bay, whereas these are see-throughs. Please, show those. I mean, that's a question, comment, little violation on my part there. But those are my questions.
Okay, I don't have any other questions, but looking back at our last review of this, in general, other than the room that was sort of forming that bridge that you drove under, fairly favorable. There were some comments about study the height and what you've done, and you've reduced the height. I see you have a 9'1" finished floor to plate. Is there any reason it's 9'1"? Or is it just?
That's just the framing height.
Okay, 9'1". It is. Okay, so with that in mind, why don't we head into comments? Richard, you want to start? Well, you're
Just going in order.
You're the alternate picky.
right.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate the amount of lower. This is significant lowering. I don't know how you did it, but it is nestled down in there as far as it can. And these are comments, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I really appreciate the changes that have been made, the moving of the unit to the rear. I think that if everyone would put a marker at 16 high along here, and this 16 high foot building in front of it comes out to about here. So, and it's a building away. It's really quite, I don't have a problem with the third story as the way it's positioned and sheltered by the building to the south, and the fact that it's clear on the other side of the property from the residences on the north. I think that there is, I really appreciate the further setback of the first story element. And when you really look at this, it's, you take this away, which is halfway back from the site, you have a modest massing to the street. So I'm quite in support of the massing, and I don't want to go to that other place. So I think it's I support it. That's my comments.
All right.
Okay. I think realistically, we need to assume that the adjoining property. I thought I did that. Oh, it fell. There we go.
Put that dog on a leash.
Stay. I think realistically, we need to assume that the adjacent properties, the adjoining properties, are not going to remain one story. And in terms of being compatible with the adjoining properties, I don't really see that they should be the standard for compatibility. I believe that this building will actually set a higher standard than what is currently there. It's replacing a pretty massive, very plain structure, which granted is housing currently. So there is that trade-off that I think, unfortunately, is not our purview. It's Planning Commission's, and Planning Commission will see this. I think I will echo Richard's comments. I appreciate the efforts you made to bring this down in scale and to move that the mass back toward the rear end of the property. With regard to the lobby use and function, again, that's a Planning Commission issue, and it's, for what I see, it's got to function as a lobby, and I trust that's what it'll be used for. With regard to the landscaping, and we're probably getting in advance of where we should at this point, at least in terms of my comments, but I would love to see some vines in the pockets around the parking. You've got vines in the back wall, the property line wall, but no vines on the building itself, and I think that kind of thing could also help scale down the building. Adding in my experience, creeping fig is not the best vine for the purpose. It tends to pull itself down over time, and I think you can probably use something like Boston ivy, which would cling to the building with less weight and do a very nice job. I'd like to see a street tree added on the Milpas Street elevation, if in consultation with the city arborist, he agrees that there's room for one. And that's it. I think it's, as I say, it's an improvement, and I think it'll be an improvement to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, Howard? I pretty much agree with the other comments. I can support this project from a size, bulk, and scale. I also think the style of the architecture is appropriate. It's pretty well done. If I had anything to say that was different, is I would study these rooms and the size and location of their windows and what they actually look at. On the second floor, the guest rooms 1, 2, and 3 have windows that look right out onto this 16-foot wall, back of building. And then we have the deck over here in the back, which undetermined looks at somebody's backyard and so forth. My understanding is this is north. The views are to the east, is that right? To the northeast. The mountain's running like this. So it would be, and I see you have those units, but I would study the location of windows and size so that and balconies, you can combine and recombine them to get the optimal views in the right locations. And I would just like to see you render the heights of buildings on adjacent properties, all views, and also to maybe clean up the rendering a little bit so that those things that see through are rendered so that we see through, and idea of maybe light and plants beyond greatly changes the impression of the building. Those are my comments.
Okay.
I agree with everything else.
Great, thank you.
And I can support the project.
Okay, the only things I would have to add are, as Howard mentioned as well, we just need more information about what, the adjacent privacy impacts there might be or issues, particularly in that rear unit now that it's been relocated, or I guess the standalone unit that's on stilts. What is it looking at? And as well, I guess we need to craft a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a question for staff. Could we not send this on directly? Do we need to come back here once more? Well, this is a question to the board. Do we need to come back here? They come back here once more, or can we send this on to Planning Commission with our specific questions in regards to adjacent properties being impacted and all the comments that we've heard?
Well, we'll refer to or defer to staff on that. What's the schedule for this? Is it still being reviewed?
Chair Moore, Commissioner Six, you could forward this on to Planning Commission unless you'd like to see it again before it goes to Planning Commission. If you do forward it to Planning Commission, I would ask that you consider the compatibility analysis in order to communicate to PC that you've done that study. It is possible that during the DART review, there could be some changes that might affect the project. For example, I'm going to double check on the flood zone. So if there are significant changes that are required during the DART process, I would require that they come back. So right now you could either make a motion to continue it back here one more time before going to Planning Commission, or you could consider the compatibility analysis and forward it on to Planning Commission assuming it doesn't change too much during the DART review.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make the point that we have been in situations in the past where motions have read that size, bulk, and scale is acceptable before all of the information was given to the board. I've heard you talking about wanting to have renderings of the neighboring buildings, if that will factor into your decision making onto whether or not size, bulk, and scale is acceptable. I would hold off on making any motion that has language to the acceptability of it until you have all the information, so that it's fair to the applicant as well as the public to understand where you guys stand rather than changing with further information.
I would agree with that, and I would hold on, Howard. So I would agree with that, and personally, I would also, before we give, for instance, PDA or anything like that, I would like to see the building in CAD, outside of the color renderings with shadows and color on them, just to confirm all the heights and.
Before it went to PC.
I don't think it has to do that before it goes to PC, but before we give it a preliminary.
No, I'm not
or
talking about.
No, PDA can be.
Right.
I don't think,
Absolutely.
I would not support PDA at this time.
I wasn't suggesting that we do that at this
Okay?
meeting.
This discussion.
Just
So
communicating.
the question is about PC, and we can send it to PC with our comments, but if in fact the floodplain question changes the building,
it could be a
I
big
would
change.
rather have it come back here and
Absolutely.
support the project before going to PC.
Yes.
Will that happen before they go through the DART review?
It's part of it.
Chair Moore, the project can't receive any approvals today. It's only for comments. And so the applicant is just looking for positive comments to proceed to PC unless you'd like to see it again before it goes to PC.
Okay, well, let's do a straw vote. How many feel that we should see additional information about the surrounding buildings before we send it on to PC? I think I would. 3? So that passes. So we will see you again.
What about the floodplain?
Well,
That's the DART review.
That's for them to take care of.
Just want to make sure.
I'll make a motion for 2 weeks continuance. Well, okay.
Let's do indefinite.
Indefinite continuance.
There's no rush because I'm sure there is a rush on the applicant's part to some extent, but there needs to be a formal DART application submittal. We have a 30-day application review time. Assuming it might even be not deemed complete on the first time, which is common, it might have to come back. So, is that okay with the applicant?
So continue indefinitely.
With comments?
With comments as stated.
Okay, so we
I'll
don't need a
second
motion?
that. Did you make a motion? I'll second that.
Should we summarize the comments?
Yeah, it should be in a motion.
Okay, so, you have to summarize our comments as a
I
part
thought
of
you were
your
writing
motion.
them down.
I heard two comments clearly, which were to provide CAD renderings for clarity of the drawings, restudy for further setback.
Impact on neighboring properties.
And the views through the carports, I'm not sure that CAD renderings at this point are.
That wasn't part of, that
So I
was
would say
for
not
future.
that. No CAD renderings at this point in time. That's asking the architect to go, spend a lot of time and expense doing
That's in the
something that
future.
may be negated because of the floodplain issue.
Correct.
So, Ms. Gu, I heard that they supported the massing and bulk and scale of the project. They wanted to consider the privacy of adjacent neighbors and views from various balconies and windows. Study the sizes and locations of balconies and windows. Show heights of adjacent properties on the renderings.
Structures.
Adjacent buildings on the renderings.
Buildings
and-
on adjacent properties.
Okay, and then perhaps add more vines?
Yes.
Um,
And investigate possibility of an additional street tree.
A street tree, yep, I got that.
Thank you, Ms. Rodison.
Okay, that's your motion.
That's my motion.
And the seconder is okay with that motion?
He is.
Okay.
Wherever he is.
Who was the second?
It was you.
That was you, okay. Howard seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
So am I going to see you this week? Next week from Wednesday is show and tell.
You got one?
19th.
There's the old one. Okay.
Nice project.
Thank you.
We're on to 500 Anacapa Street. Okay, 500 Anacapa Street. We're ready for you. 500 Anacapa? That's you, yeah. We're ready.
He walks in and the gate's open.
Nice of you to get us up early.
I like the shirt.
Well, it looks like we have to wait until Richard comes back, but
I've got a non-wrinkled set if that works.
as long as it's the same.
Same? Yeah.
Take action anyway. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
okay, great.
Excellent.
How's it going?
So far, so good.
And your shoes been on a lot of projects, so you're seeing a lot of stuff that you probably don't want to see. Sorry about that.
That's right, it works.
Okay, we have quorum back. This is 500 Anacapa. This is the second concept review, comments only. This is a proposal for a mixed-use project. Proposes a lot merger of 5 parcels, the adaptive reuse of an existing 6,392 square foot mixed-use building containing 2 residential units and an existing 4,548 square foot commercial building, demolition of 3 commercial buildings totaling 4,758 square feet, and the construction of a new 12,001 square foot 7-unit apartment structure. Also, total units on site will be 9 2-bedroom units, ranging in size from 800 to 1,512 square feet. Also proposed are 16 uncovered parking spaces and 12 covered parking spaces and roof-mounted photovoltaic paneling. Project requires Planning Commission review. Okay. Welcome, and if you could introduce yourselves.
Yes, my name is Tom Oxner, project architect.
Julio Vena, landscape architect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is, I think the board might be a little familiar with the project, and what I could do is go over the minutes of the last meeting, and I could describe what changes have been made and then go through those points. Is that an appropriate way, or I'm happy to start from scratch?
Well, how much has changed, and would it be useful to the board to kind of get a refresher on the project? So, has the configuration changed greatly?
Well, I could go over that. I've got minutes. Do we normally go through the minutes of the last meeting?
Depends on the situation.
Okay, I'm happy. I'll go through and you can
Okay.
Stop me if I'm getting in too deep here. So,
Okay, great.
Basically, the last project, the major items that have changed is that the scope of the work has been reduced. So this portion of the project from Haley Street to the middle of Anacapa Street has been eliminated from the project. So now the project consists of the merger of 5 parcels right in here. So I'll go through here briefly on the photos, and we've got more photos than we need, but we'll just kind of go through, and we're all familiar with Anacapa Street as it works its way up. And then we've got up to where we get 510 Anacapa, which is right where we're starting to be dealing with. This is one of the buildings that will be remodeled. We're keeping the same structural shell and just remodeling the exterior and the interior layout. This is looking into the parking area there at 518 Anacapa, and this is the broad area of the parking area within these 5 parcels that kind of come together, joined by this central parking area, and more shots of that. This is one of the buildings that we're remodeling as well. It fronts Anacapa Street at 526. And here's a shot at the two buildings we're remodeling and then the parking area in between. And another shot of that and a backup of 518 Anacapa. And these are just a little bit more of the same. There's an aerial of you can see the parking. These are some of the buildings that will come down. I'll go over those on the demo plan. This is Veracruz Street behind that buffers the property from the park. There's another shot of Veracruz and how it relates to the property. And that is looking from Veracruz in to the rear of the property. And then these are just some additional shots of Anacapa Street. This is looking across the street on Anacapa down Anacapa. So I can come back to these if anybody needs to see photos. So the comments from the last meeting, I watched the meeting and I read the comments and took seriously the points that were taken. I'm going to move to the first sheet. This is the demolition site plan. So this is Anacapa across here. And so our project is these 5 parcels which will be merged. We're looking at really demolishing everything back here and then reworking these 2 front buildings. This front building has a 2-bedroom residential unit above it, and this is just a shell. It's an automotive structure, basically. And I'm going to move into the proposed site plan. And I'm just going to kind of go through the comments that were made at the last meeting because we've looked at the comments, and that's kind of how we geared our project around. Item 1, the board appreciated the effort. I'm going to go to item 2, architectural style. I'll get into that. There was some concerns about the architectural style at the last meeting, not really being modern and not really being Santa Barbara traditional. So we've clung to the Santa Barbara traditional, obviously. And then the demising wall, there was an arcade that kind of severed these two, and we took that out. And as Julio will show you, his landscape scheme will kind of unite all the buildings and the spaces in between. The site plan needs to be refined, addressing more balance between the individual buildings' mass and open space. And again, so the cohesiveness and the pedestrian circulation has changed a bit. One interesting thing is don't have clarity on the ability to access the park from this development. So we're not showing a gate here. And that's something that we're looking to maybe work further with staff with, although they made it fairly clear that we don't have that circulation. But we've still maintained and put as an importance on this thoroughfare for the future of potentially being able to use that. We've pulled the parking back from the street 20 feet now from the edge of the sidewalk and widened some of the areas in front of the buildings and introduced some more landscaping. Basically, this building is the same. The massing's really the same that you had seen. The architecture just got reworked a bit. And let's see here. The project still features the solar panels on the buildings. I'm utilizing these 2 roofs, as this roof is so prominent, and at 3-story, I don't feel comfortable with the solar panels on this structure, so I've got them in these structures here. And then, let's see, and I think the landscaping Julio can speak to when we get there, so I'll keep moving. So the first building we'll look at is 518 Anacapa. That's this building right here. So I'm going to go to... That's this building right here. So the idea of this building is to basically keep its general massing, and it's not far from where it was before, and just widening out this mass, creating a hip, and using a flat tiled parapet or a Spanish tile parapet, S-tile, and 2 sides with canopies. The concept on this building is to potentially use it for a restaurant or a few restaurants or food service. We've created these bays out of it and accentuated them with heavy timber, and we're looking to go with a volume of ceiling with some skylights and with some gable end heavy timber windows on the 2 gable ends, and the solar panels end would be on the back of the 5 and 12, and expressing a deep overhang on the front here with bandsawed corbels and rafters on the storefront side with 2 entrances and a tall plate with some higher glazing above the doors. So this is 518 Anacapa. Now let's move to the rear building. The rear building is organized very similar to the way you saw it last time. There's parking below. The site plan, we reduced 2 parking spaces just to free things up a little bit. We got our stairways, elevator. The condensers are on the ground level back here. And then the level above it, we've got 4 one-bedroom units. And then the highest level, 2 one-bedroom units, and then a larger 2-bedroom unit. And the roof, traditional hips and gables and sheds as it works around with a little bit of relief between. So the height is very similar. The plates, we've got 12 from parking to the main level, and then a 10-foot plate and a 9-foot plate. The overall height is 37.6. And the west elevation is fronting Anacapa Street, and that is organized in such a way to sort of express the upper level plazas. The highest plaza has been cut back to relieve the amount of shade up there a bit from what was previously there. And then this the north elevation backs up to that new structure here, and it will allow for the massing that they're proposing with the patios and the window placement, and I can go over that more if you'd like to see that. So we're looking at traditional forms with kind of a mixture of the roof lines, and then this east elevation, which looks over Veracruz, has got quite a bit of the open space on the upper living units to take advantage of that experience out there. And then the third building is right here. It's 526 Anacapa, and that's this building here. So this is this one would also be remodeled using the same massing, and so basically we're introducing a colonnade just like was before, a little tighter at the 2-story area and spreading it out at the 1-story area. Adding a little bit of square footage on here just to help with the overall forms, and then this deck becomes a location for solar panels and a trellised patio off of this 2-bedroom upper unit. Again, using the tiled parapet around 2 edges. And so if we look at the architecture, kind of get a feeling on how we're handling the existing massing that's there. We're really using a lot of the same organization of what's there. But we're going with a steeper pitch gable roof and a shed, and then a broken pitch shedded element to cover the 2nd-story balcony and stairway system. And then this is the facade that fronts the parking lot. So we've got our colonnade, which is broken up a bit with the tighter colonnade below the 2nd-story 2-bedroom unit, and then these bays, which could be organized in a few ways depending on the potential commercial users, and then the garbage back behind, recycling and trash. back here. And let's see, I think we are ready for some landscaping at surface.
As you can see, there's generous parking. And of course, the parking, always results in paving in one form or another. In this particular case, we've decided and selected the kind of a brick-like material that will give us much warmth that we feel these developments are very much in need of. Sheila Lodge once said that she was regretting that many of the parking areas and different things like that are going into concrete, various shades of concrete. And we're losing a lot of the tile, we're losing a lot of the brick and so forth. And obviously, State Street has brick, sidewalks anyway. And so in this particular case, we've decided to move into the paving along with more in the warmth color, both for the pedestrian walkways and also for the parking, as you can see. As you enter the development, you have two generous parking areas or planting areas, basically about 400 square feet on each side. And I've selected jacarandas to give us some color and give us some freshness and laciness to the development, in addition to the flowering effect that we would be getting as opposed to olive trees or some other varieties. I think they're very becoming to the city. Along with that, I've selected the palm tree varieties to be the kinship variety of palm trees. I find them very adaptable to Santa Barbara weather and Santa Barbara weather conditions and soils and so forth. And I've yet to see any sad-looking kenchias to date. So I think that they also they're stately, they're graceful, and they're a gorgeous palm tree. They add a lot to the architecture, and at the same time, the foliage is very, very refreshing. And they're in 20 years, you won't find them 50 to 100 feet up in the air or 50 feet up in the air. They're slow growing. All of the other plant materials are selected are very low water users. And there are some agaves that I have here that will bloom at different times and give you a nice scale. There's also coming into the blues that will complement the color of the jacarandas as far as ground cover is concerned. And vines along some of the walls that let's see where my wall's at. Yeah. Anyway, well, there are some concrete walls in these areas here. So we have these orange flame vines that will give us winter color, and they'll stay evergreen as far as that's concerned. So all in all, once again, color. We have the bougainvilleas, the Rosenka variety, several in each of the planter areas. As you can see, the generosity of the planters. So, and then in addition to that, topping it off with a large gravel, the Cal Gold type of gravel that would be 2 to 3 inches as far as rock type. And that pretty much does it as far as that goes. And I think we've taken everything into consideration, and I think we have a colorful, well-presented, and including giving it a Santa Barbara flavor, if you will.
Okay.
I just have one more comment before we close our. This is not an AUD. This is a standard zone project, and it's really generous on the open space. The open space required is 15%, which would be around 4,300 square feet of open space, and we're at about 7,000 square feet of open space. So it's a little atypical, I think, maybe from what you've been seeing in the area.
What is included in that open space?
Well, not the parking, of course. So it's the classic, it's got to be a 10-foot, at least 10 feet wide, and it's an area not utilized for parking.
You need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the classic calculation for open space, yes.
All right. If that concludes your presentation, we can.
Yes, and also there's fairly generous walkways to accommodate the people that will be coming through. I didn't illustrate any pots, but definitely there's room for some three-dimensional pots that would of good size with some good planning that would give us, once again, a third dimension.
Okay.
Questions?
Great.
Comments?
Questions? Howard, would you like to start?
Mr. Chair, could you please open and close public comment?
Yes. We're going to open for public comment. Anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of this project? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment and move into questions. Howard?
Questions?
Yes.
I do have questions, but they're not at the front
okay.
of the room right now.
Okay.
I have one question.
Do you want to start? Okay, excellent.
We've got a lot of comments, but one question. Curious to know about the access to the alley into Plaza Veracruz. It seems like that would be a natural thing that would be encouraged by staff. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, so we've been directed by staff that we cannot propose any kind of access, vehicular or pedestrian, to Veracruz Plaza, and we still show it on our landscape plan and wishful thinking here, but there are reasons for that. Apparently, it's a city maintained, and it's not a public alleyway. Although right now it's being used for access on some of those properties, but.
Do you have anything to add to that?
It's longstanding park policy that access not be taken from public park. That is actually part of the property for the. So the
alley is part of the park.
It's part of the park.
It's not a public street. It's not
Correct.
a public alley, even though it's used that way.
Correct.
So they want you to come from the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
I know it'd be great to just flow into the park. It's a natural.
That's all my questions.
Okay. I've got some. So since we're back there, what's our setback from that alleyway?
Well, it's a zero setback. It's commercial, so
What
but
are
we've
you-
got a
What are you
couple of feet,
proposing?
2 feet.
2 feet? And then do you have a section kind of, or some way to describe what the building is doing
Sure.
back there?
Yeah. Let's see here. I think the best way to do it is to look at the profile of that building. So this is probably the best way to describe it. So the first level comes within 2 feet, and then that is opened up with these openings for the parking beyond, and then the terraces sort of stack on top of each other, and as you can see, this steps back. So this right here is the only continual mass, but then that steps back a little bit. That steps back another 2 feet from the mass below it, and then there is so you really have sort of this element being somewhat gently stepping back from that.
So this space is 4 feet?
That space is 4 feet.
Back from the property line or?
The park. Yeah, it's an open space, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I interrupt the flow?
Yes.
So your east elevation presumably is the park elevation?
Yes.
And you're showing landscaping?
Well, yeah, I'm
Doesn't
showing
show
sort
up- Doesn't show up on the plan.
Showing foreground, yeah. There was the park in the foreground across the, is the intent there.
It's borrowed landscape.
It's basically front step.
Got it. Yeah, I
So
visit
there's-
that park frequently.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then while we're on the back building, was there consideration given to moving that building more forward and trying to get the parking for the project more behind structures?
Yes, so we looked at that, and the thinking was that when a building is fronting a permanent open space like that it's a better solution to position the mass closer to the permanent open space and then give the relief to the plaza on the other side, which is bound by the city fabric. So that was the thinking.
So the parking, when you say plaza, you mean the parking lot
Yeah,
and then the walkways
The
around?
parking lot and the immediate U-shaped plaza that it encompasses. So the concept was to give the volume. So, and that was kind of the essence of the front sketch, to try to, the idea is to really give the feeling like, you know, you've got this depth of landscape, and the depth of this building beyond the Anacapa itself would allow for a nice indentation and relief from the buildings along that street.
Okay. And on the parking question, are you overparked, or you have enough parking?
We are overparked,
Okay.
and this is 2 less parking spaces than the previous project, so we have reduced it by 2. We are well over generous, as I mentioned, on the open yard. But we are overparked, yes.
In which way, residential or commercial?
Well, in both, you know, but predominantly in commercial, yeah.
How much overparked? Be specific in terms of numbers of spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it could vary depending on the use of the commercial space, but in the 10-car range.
You mean you could have, I'm not sure what you mean by 10-car range. If you took 10 spaces away from this, you pretty much have nothing. So
Well, there's 28 spaces, I think. We've got 7.
Well, you're required 2 plus 4 plus 8. So 14.
28, so, yeah.
essentially twice what you
Double
need.
park.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Then the unit sizes, there's kind of a big range. Can you walk us through what's
Yeah.
bedroom and
Sure.
one
Yeah,
bedroom?
so there's one existing unit that we're just remodeling, and that is at 526, and that unit is, let's start back here. It's a 2-bedroom, and that's in the 900 and change square foot range.
Okay. And it was a
And
2-bedroom?
it was there, it was already there. We're adding this covered, open trellis, partially covered space to it. The new building is 7 units. And you can see this is a floor plan of at the second floor, the podium level here. We've got, you know, typical 1-bedroom units here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 1-bedrooms are pretty popular units in the city. And as you can see, it combines the living, dining, kitchen all in one area. That's about 25 feet, and then it has a bedroom with a bathroom.
And these are for sale, or these are going to be?
Not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They're not condos.
Okay.
And then the upper level has got 2 similar 1-bedroom units, and then it has 1 2-bedroom unit, which fronts the plaza.
Okay. So at the street, there's really no change to the heights of these buildings. There's some modification to the appearance, but is anything getting taller?
Well, very little subtleties, just what it takes to get these masses. I've put, these are probably a good illustration here, so you can kind of see what's going on here. This gable is set back from the street. This front is a flat roof, so that maintains pretty much the height, and then that gable sets, I'm looking at the wrong building. Sorry, am I looking?
You got it.
I had it right, yeah, there we go. So that's,
So this roof kind of comes off and gets a parapet?
yeah, it comes up slightly
And then
and
a
gets a
new-
parapet.
a new
And then this
gable.
gable pushes back, and that turns into, it gets widened a bit, so the massing works out a little better, and turns into a shed. And then this has the same thing, it's anchored by a shed, this turns into a shed. And then the gable comes up here and wraps around. So pretty much the same massing as you've got now.
Okay. Richard, questions?
So the south property that was on the previous submittal has gone away.
Excuse me?
The south
Oh,
property
yes.
here?
Yes, yeah, that's not a part of the project anymore.
And will it be developed as part of it later, or you
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the width of the open air central parking, is that down to the minimum standard, or is that wider than?
That's a good question. It didn't look big to me. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but in looking at it, that's 18, that's 18.
We could throw a scale on it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Close to 60.
I think this is 10 scale. Is that
Yes.
right?
What is it,
Yeah.
64?
Yeah, so 10 scale.
We're going to have to just wing it here. So we're 60 to curb, or 64-ish.
That's
Yeah,
about.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Is there any, on 518, is there any, that's just a decorative brick
That is, yeah, that's a
thing,
yeah.
just decorative, right?
I'm not sure.
It could be wiped out.
I think it's structural. I think it's a solid grouted slump stone.
So it's
CMU.
It's developing your lateral, but not above the roof.
Not above the roof. So my anticipation is exactly that, to cut it where we don't need it and to utilize, rather than tearing it down, to utilize it as a, assuming that it checks out with some
Can I
steel.
see that photograph, please?
Was there any, let me see the magic wand. Can I see?
Oh, yeah.
Was there any, the reason that these spaces here were left without landscape between, it seems, the reason that these were left without landscape between was to get access to the commercial on each side, correct?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. And just last question, was there any restudy of how to access, how do the people that live here, where do they park, back in here and have to walk all the way through here?
Well, yeah, so there's enough, the parking assignment really hasn't been established, but, there's adequate parking, I think, back here to, to secure parking for this unit up there. But, if the residential commercial balance kind of works sometimes well when people are leaving commercial spaces, people are coming home.
There was no consideration of a study to put this access to this unit.
That's a good thought, and that crossed my mind. The fact that it exists and it could be kind of retooled with a new veneer was the attraction to it, and that was why we kept it. But it was that's a good thought. If this was a new building, I would have put that access back there.
Thank you. That's my questions.
Okay,
So I have a couple of questions now, because
Okay.
I didn't have them before.
Okay.
Where is the EPV relative to this property?
El Pueblo Viejo. Well, it's one street over from State, isn't it? And so this would be.
Is
just on the other
Anacapa
side.
in El Pueblo Viejo, or is it just one side of it?
I think EPV actually goes halfway back from State Street to Anacapa.
But not
It doesn't go all the way to
all the way?
Anacapa.
Let's
Okay.
let planning give us accurate information.
And are you in a flood zone here?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Uh-huh.
And that is, I've got to double check that, but it didn't come up in special problems. But yeah, that's a good question.
Otherwise, the whole city would be in a flood zone.
It almost is.
It is.
Very close is. You're close to it here, that's for sure.
Okay, and so just curious, in the building 518, you show timber trusses, I think. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Are those there, or are they,
No.
you're putting those in?
The bays are established. but there's a flat roof across there.
I see.
So the idea is to take the roof off, use the structural bays, and then go with a timber truss, or maybe even a cladded timber truss, possibly.
What is your relationship to parking zone of benefit? Do you have one? Are you in one?
No, we're not in a parking benefit
Zero.
zone. Zero. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, to answer the question about El Pueblo Viejo, on the blocks between Coda and Haley, the only structures within El Pueblo Viejo actually are the ones that front State Street. So the whole block behind it is not included in El Pueblo Viejo, including, and then even further onto this. So,
Okay. So only these buildings along State Street are part of EPV?
Correct. Further north on State Street, it jogs back into the neighborhoods, but on this location, no.
So we are, just to be clear, we're not EPV adjacent.
No.
And we're not in a parking zone of benefit?
This isn't a parking zone of benefit. Wouldn't know off the top of my head what exactly the zone of benefit would be, but there is a zone of benefit here.
Where is the nearest parking garage, if I may ask?
Across the street.
It's across the street.
Really? Well, that's right.
On-grade
It's a
parking lot.
Parking lot. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question.
Howard,
That's my question.
what's your question? Okay, yes.
Has the Transportation Department reviewed this split driveway idea? And Julio, is that particular State Street something that can easily be provided with new and bring back healthy to match the other trees? Or is that a tough one to regrow?
I'm sorry?
Is that a tough one to, if Transportation did not like this split tongue,
Transportation's seen it.
it's seen it and they go for it?
I met with them.
Never mind then.
Another question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Julio, maybe can we look at the landscape plan, please? Is this a tree well?
There is a tree well, and that's a magnolia.
And how about this one?
Likewise. Likewise.
Okay, and these are all three
Magnolias.
planted with magnolias?
Yes, they are. And they appear to be doing fairly well.
And how far are we from that jacaranda?
Well, basically, you're about 15 feet more likely.
Let me see the scale, please.
Go to a site plan, maybe.
So, 12 feet. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have another question.
Okay. One more question.
So, given that you are on Anacapa Street, what's your maximum height that you could have gone with this building if you decided to really build out this site?
45 feet.
And why did you not do that?
Well, the last project you saw, you didn't, I was trying to stay within the comments and the discussion of where this project was last time.
Okay, so in the Anacapa Street corridor, your building, and by the amalgamation of these parcels, you have this property that's fronts, backs along the Veracruz Parkway there. So the tall building would be fronting the park, or just the alley?
The alley. So the alley is between the building and the park.
And I see, so, but the alley, in fact, communicates with the park on the opposite this building?
Yes.
Open? Okay.
Yeah.
And, okay, yeah, all right, fine.
Okay.
I'm done.
Questions are done. Let's move into comments. Bob, do you want to start?
I'll start.
Great.
First of all, I don't know how possible this is, but I think every effort should be made to provide access onto the park from this property. It's a public amenity. It should be available to the residents of this complex who otherwise have to walk essentially a full block to get to a park that's 3 feet away. It makes no sense to close that off. Number two, it's nice that we've got the existing street trees. I think the tree between the driveways, your jacaranda, is going to really be in conflict with the magnolia. So I think that needs to be reconsidered, the species of the tree or whether or not you put a tree there at all. I'm a little bothered by the glass expanse and the heavy timber on 518 Anacapa. I think that building is getting, the design of that building is really departing from Spanish colonial, whereas the rest of the complex is pretty nice in terms of its adherence to Spanish colonial design. But the open gable with the truss seems way too contemporary, as well as the facade facing the parking lot. I understand that the desire for glass, but I think that the heavy timber and the glass, really the only thing that you've got in that part of that building that's Spanish is the tile roof. So I think that needs to be reconsidered. I think it would be a really good idea. I love the pavers in the parking and the pedestrian area, but it's monochrome and it's a huge expanse of pavers, and I think it would be, at minimum, a good idea to differentiate the colors between the automobile and the pedestrian portions. I think, while I love the plant palette, I don't think the Kentias are going to get to a height necessary to, I don't want to say buffer because I don't think it's necessary, but I think you need more scale height in the landscape. And I'm not saying replace the Kentias with some other kind of palm, although I think you can certainly complement with another variety of palm that will get some height to it, because the Kentias will never get to the height of a 3-story building.
No, probably not. It will take a while yet.
Yeah. So I'd like to see greater variety in terms of the heights of the landscape. I love jacarandas as much as the next person, but you have 13 and you don't have any other species of canopy tree, and I think it would be a good idea to have a mix, at least one more species. I love the jacaranda color, but there are other colorful trees that you could mix in there that would even make it more interesting and exciting. And I would, I think you've got palms along the edges of the parking. Sorry.
That's an older one, I
This is
think.
it. Here, here, and here, and here, and here. And I think Kentias in those locations would kind of just be, lost. I think this would be a good location, each site here, for at least one canopy tree, maybe without the Kentias or maybe in addition. If you've got an abundance of parking, it would be great to take one of these spaces, or at least a part of one space, and get a canopy tree covering over on each side here. I think essentially the concept of the landscape design is beautiful. I think this is going to be really nice. I'd just like you to consider adding some variety to the plants, the trees in particular.
May I address that?
Excuse
me, you're on.
Let's get through our comments, and then you can have a moment.
You
Are
want-
we
okay.
ready? Yeah.
I agree with Bob's comments about the heavy timber and glass and the mix-up styles there. I would study that, try to be more consistent with the Spanish colonial revival. I think that also if you study the buildings, the existing buildings that you are redecorating essentially, you might want to look at these double arches that have more than one center, and they're not quite elliptical, but they're kind of wowing around. I'd get those to be either elliptical or circular,
Where are
meaning
we-
round.
are we talking-
Anyone, that's a couple of them there. On the front, on the first page, right there, T1. The building on the left, 518,
Oh, this?
526. Yeah, those are. It seems like it's a strange arch there. And also, when you create these thick walls, plaster walls, the metal handrails and the handrail extensions to get the 42 inches, it seems a little kind of an add-on. I would make those solid walls and either step them up or, run straight down, cap them, give them some kind of an architectural feeling. The canopy, the tile canopy over the stair in that same building, something's doesn't look right there. Turning the corner and supporting this canopy out on a column and then bracketing it back to the building at the other end, I would study that. That doesn't want to be that way for some reason. It's just a little, seems like it's tacked on. In the building in the back, I also want to echo Bob's comment about the connection to the park. You have created a plaza here, which is anything but a pedestrian plaza. It's a plaza for cars. And it would be great if you could somehow, you've got twice as many cars, including the ones under the building and in the courtyard, than you need per areas. And quite conceivably, you could drop this building to the ground and have all the parking in here. In that case, it would be a motor court. Or you can put the cars under here and have more pedestrian-friendly planted space, landscaped areas or whatever. And maybe by changing the shape of this, open up a corridor to this park over here. But and also by articulating these paved areas with changing the paving in pedestrian areas, and maybe where you cross over, like this is where you park, this is where you transition, and this is where you park. You might be able to articulate something there. Most of what I have to say are little things like that, but the big comment would be, again, it's kind of, by being a 3-story building, it's neither a 4-story building, which would maximize the development and solve the problems of a 4-story building, setbacks and variations in height and so forth, or go to the ground and keep it a low rise project. Somehow low rise doesn't fit with the area because everybody's talking about trying to make the downtown core a higher buildings, not 65 feet, but 35, 45 feet. So anyway, I for one, if you were to study this and decide that maybe you could reconfigure this and make the building skinnier and taller to open up the corridor, I would not discourage you from that if you solve the architectural problems of the bulk and scale and the articulation of the mass. You originally here were 5 sites, now 1. So you want this to look like a grouping of buildings rather than a colossal development. That's my take on it.
Do you have any, I think we should, do you have any specific comments about the back building, being that that's brand new, height, bulk, mass, all of that?
If this were in a neighborhood, a low-rise neighborhood, I would have a problem with it. But this is very close to the core, the downtown core, which in my opinion is going to go up. And in going up, there are architectural and design problems to be solved, which have to do with handling the size, bulk, and scale of tall buildings. This location here, because it's between commercial and a park and along a pedestrian, is this a Paseo system almost? Part of the Paseo system? We don't know that. But this building, it has actually on the second deck, second floor, it has open space and kind of a little plaza there, a little terrace. Mm-hmm. So it is, and anyway, that's my comment. So I think this may be a potential area for study of maybe a higher and better use of the property, and also to create a more user-friendly, pedestrian-friendly spaces on the ground floor, including more landscaping, more playground or whatever it is. For example, one of these buildings could become a coffee shop or a restaurant, in which case they would have a place for outdoor seating. And he's got a great little fountain courtyard here. More of that. But I think to fill up the space with cars and brick is unfortunate.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Yeah, to jump off where Howard left, I'm thinking that my overall, I think it's a great project. I'm thinking that there could be, in respect to making the front area not just for parking, but for more uses, especially for the restaurant outside dining, that playing musical chairs with this row of parking here. Maybe you have enough depth and fauna and resting area here, and maybe the parking moves down this way, so you open up a big area here of seating and so forth, and planting and so forth. As far as the massing of 520 Anacapa, I'm okay with the east elevation, being that it is in context to the big open park. And I don't see a problem with that and its massing. I do see a lot of opportunities with the front, even though it's back from the street. I see a lot of opportunities in the front to reduce the mass, bulk, and scale. I see this plate height. The first question I had, if that's the elevator and it needs its clearance, why is the elevator the lower than the plate height at 9? So I'm thinking that maybe this becomes more of a classic tower to place your clearances for your elevator, and that plate at least around to, there's a roof break here, right here. Maybe all of this becomes down to, an 8-foot plate height plus, your dropping eaves and so forth. So I think that should be studied.
So you're suggesting that he study this to reduce?
Yeah, he's got 9-foot plates all the way through here and turning the corner and so forth. So I think they're restudying the plate heights, bringing that down. And likewise, comment on the north existing building. If you really look at the existing images, that Even, no, I had it here.
There it is.
Ah, thank you. So even in this existing, you can see how the height of this guy is really jutting out and influencing that. So I'm thinking this wraparound balcony should not be there. There should be just, if you're going to continue to come up the stair from the front, that should just be an open air balcony and reduce all this. And again, bring your plate heights down and just a eave condition that would significantly reduce that. I would even study the option of taking this whole stair and bringing it to the other side. I don't know whether that's in the scope or not. But I think you could lose a lot of your two-story massing at that corner of the building, which would impact the massing significantly. And for 518, the restaurant, where is that baby?
That's not what's out in front here.
Yeah. So I would consider, well, first of all, I think that this stuff up front here, if I understand it, is just honoring a stone parapet that can easily be taken away. And I think all of this stuff out here is not helping the project. And I would also suggest that in order to reduce the overall appearance of mass project, I would introduce having this in some other than a Spanish style. Like, if I could see that working if these were in a wood expression or some other thing that's dark and woodsy and so forth, and it doesn't have to, the project can be schizophrenic, and it would help reduce the massing of the whole thing. So I think that's...
You're suggesting maybe for the roof, by doing taking on a different design
style.
aesthetic, it might reduce the mass of that roof?
It might reduce the mass. This might be a metal, this might be a completely different style. The area is eclectic anyway.
We do have on north of this building, the French press, which is very contemporary.
Yeah. So, I think that instead of the project looking like it was built all at one time, there would be an immediate history, and it would help the massiveness of it. So I think, I don't have my notes, but I think that's about it. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, that's it.
Okay. Okay. I think it's interesting to see this as a scaled back project, and I think it's done fairly sensitively and with, minimal impact. I guess my main gripe is just this big expanse of parking and paver here. I think it's just counter to this, what we're trying to do these days by eliminating parking at the street. We want to get parking behind buildings. We want that more urban feel. This is a really suburban feel here. And especially if we are, essentially double parked. I mean, you're just, laying out just a huge expanse. And I think Howard has a good point about if all the parking can be taken care of here, why is this an extra floor up in the air? You're impacting the public because you want to have more parking than is really required. So I think that's that's something that could be studied and could help to reduce the impact on the public for this new building. That would also help to mitigate the impact to the park, even though, as you say, it's a open space and it's not a big deal. But this building is going to cast a long shadow across that park. That's afternoon sun is going to be, the sun's going to come across here, and it's going to be shadows throughout that, and that's going to have a potentially negative impact on the use and users of the park. So it's sort of, I don't know which way I would go with it, but what I do see is there's a tremendous opportunity to rework this area and to really create a vibrant location that's coming in off the sidewalk for a use that would really help this street, whether it's outdoor dining or something else. But this, just to have a little, 10-foot so or wide walkway here, you're not really doing the potential users of this building any service by limiting them to that. I mean, you could potentially lose this entire side of parking and still be just fine. Or you could lose the entire front portion of this parking and be just fine. And just come back with a skinny driveway and give that area to the users of this property.
If I could add on to that, sorry.
Sure.
More comments. I go to the French Press every now and then, once or twice a week, and in the afternoon, it's the sun glaring into that window along the face of the building is just deadly. If you're inside the building looking out, you're just looking right at the sun. This exposure here is essentially the same, and you haven't got any shade along this side. So, piggybacking onto Kevin's comments, it might be very appropriate and a good idea in terms of the use of this building to landscape as much of this as possible and get some shade on those windows.
Mm-hmm.
And an arcade.
Yeah, there could be. There's opportunities, lots of opportunities to how to address that and mitigate the sun and somehow create something that would really enhance the project, and as well as the potential to lease those spaces out. It would be a much more desirable space if there was something usable and really interesting, I think. Okay. So we need a
So I want to add one little comment. This is a spin-off of Richard's comments about this eclectic thing. So eclecticism really is not eclecticism. Eclecticism is a narrative. It's a narrative told over time. It's the layering of properties, layering of things that are added and accreted over property. So it's complex, rich, and very individual. And by trying to, again, try to make this thing all Spanish may be overwhelming. And so that's another, the narrative aspect is a very powerful piece.
If I could just comment, I mean, there are certain premises that are set at the initiation of a project. And when a project is called a plaza, it oftentimes resonates that there's a cohesiveness inherent to the design from day one. And I think, I completely understand the comments and the fabric and the diversity of architecture through a city. And I think the fact that the project has been reduced to a central area flanked by some balance and symmetry of somewhat balance of buildings, I think, it would be interesting to introduce a different style, but I'm just not sure that it was within the premise of this project.
Okay. Well, we can always recommend that be part of the study.
If I may comment, when it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
I think I'll reserve the comments that I have based on what you have extended to the architect today. I feel that there may be some pending changes as such, and for me to comment on this or that might be a little bit moot at this point.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion.
Thank for your suggestions.
I can start summarizing, and somebody can tell me if they want to make that motion. So, as a whole, I think the board is appreciative of the reduction of the overall project and appreciates the attempt to reuse the existing structures and to bring them, I guess, to upgrade their appearance, and is generally appreciative of the design aesthetic as presented. Let's take a quick straw vote. How many board members can support the mass bulk and scale of the new building at 520 Anacapa Street? 2? 3? Okay, 3-1, that pass. So,
Location?
yes.
This plan says 502 Veracruz Lane. Is that?
I'm referring to this.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Your trouble was general.
Generally, yes. Generally supportive. So the board is generally supportive of the mass bulk and scale of 520 Anacapa Street as presented. So the board would strongly recommend that the city allow direct access to the park via Veracruz Lane, and all efforts should be extended to make that happen. With landscape comments, restudy the jacaranda at the driveway entrance. Restudy the pavers and paver colors to potentially emphasize pedestrian access ways versus car area. Provide more variety in height and type of landscaping. Consider adding a variety of canopy trees. Study reducing parking. Well, first, determine if the project is part of the parking zone of benefit, and determine exactly how many spaces are required for commercial and residential uses on the site. Study reducing the amount of parking, or reduce or remove parking below back building to allow that building to be built on grade, which is a little bit inconsistent with what the direction we gave them just now. But something to study. Well, that was a comment that Howard made, so I thought it was a good comment. I would, let's get through it, and then we'll come back to that. Study removing parking study removing parking adjacent to Anacapa Street to provide a more pedestrian-friendly experience, and perhaps to provide additional outdoor area for use by the commercial buildings.
Flood control.
Yes, check with city planning staff and building department staff to determine if the project is in the flood zone. study possible eclectic design within the overall project to show the project was possibly built over time. Study at 526 Anacapa, study the second floor canopy facing Anacapa Street. Perhaps remove this canopy. Study details such as the additive guardrail. Consider extending walls up rather than having an additional guardrail.
Simplify arches.
Study simplifying arches and details at arches, particularly at 520 Anacapa Street. And then at 518 Anacapa Street, study preserving the existing masses along the street frontage. Perhaps the project would be better by removing, it could be made better by removing those.
Something about timber trusses and glass, heavy timber.
Yes, and there are comments getting to that. Lots of comments. Restudy at 518 Anacapa Street, restudy the use of glass at the gable end facing Anacapa Street. And study options for the glass and heavy timber at the north elevation. Does somebody want to add to, or, well, first, does somebody want to make that motion and then add to that?
I haven't made a motion all afternoon.
Now's your chance.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. I would. I know that this has all been pretty much implied, but it seems like it would behoove the architect and the owner, the applicant, to just take a step back and take another look at complete site utilization. You know, given the fact that you want to keep the two buildings, 518 and 526, you've got a whole lot of opportunity in the space in between to just reassess how you're utilizing the entire space.
Yeah. Do you want to?
I'd like that added to the.
Is that possible to add in a
comments?
Mr. Chair, do we still have the comment within the motion to study eliminating the parking at the Veracruz building and down to the ground?
It was in that list. It's Howard's motion, so you can ask.
Well,
I
don't necessarily think that's it, but I think the general comment to study land use, the site use, and reduce the parking, and maybe to study that new building, to see just what makes it a 3-story building as opposed to what makes it a 2-story building. And I mean, I don't know that the solution is to put the parking.
Okay. Well, how do you want to? How would you modify that comment? You're welcome to. It's your
Well,
motion.
I think it's a combination of study the site use, reduce the parking, and study the highest and best use or best development of the new building next to the park.
Okay.
Because I don't think a 4-story building will probably work because of the casting a giant shadow, but it's possible that you want to open up and connect the park to the open space that is between the existing buildings.
Okay, so do you
And
want
I
to?
think when that happens, that'll change the shape of that structure.
Okay, so do you want to strike the part about studying, removing parking from under the building and placing the building on the ground?
I think Mr. Six has an idea about that.
Well, I would like to keep it not as simply stated. I can see a possibility of putting the back 2 units on the ground in the back so they could take advantage of the park and so forth. So that wipes out only half of the parking. You know, half of it's parking, half of it's the rear unit. So I think
And that portion
that
of the building would
flexibility,
drop.
yeah. Oh, no, you take a couple units off of the front and put them in the back. So I think restudying the overall
Program. Yeah, that's what it is. Program.
overall elements of the Veracruz building to reduce its mass and provide better site usage.
I think what he said.
I'd like to add one more thing.
Well, before we move on from that, let's make sure we've got something accurate before.
So I have, we didn't really say what the motion was for, indefinite continuance, I would imagine.
Yes.
The board likes the project's limited or revised scope, and appreciates the reuse and upgrade of the existing structures. The board strongly recommends the city allows access from Plaza Veracruz, study removing the jacaranda adjacent to the driveway. Paver colors should be differentiated between car and pedestrian uses. More variety in height and type of landscaping, with the possibility of adding a variety of canopy trees. Reduce parking. Well, first it was determine whether or not this the site is within the parking zone of benefit, and if so, study reducing the parking. And that was where we had the comment about possibly moving it out from under the building. Study removing parking adjacent to the Anacapa Street. Check with building and planning to ensure that the project is not subject to any flood control restrictions. Study possible eclectic design. Study detail at the guardrail at 426 Anacapa. Simplify the arches at 526 Anacapa, along with the ones at 520 Anacapa. Preserve or study preserving the massing at 518 Anacapa Street. Restudy glass at the gable end of. I was using that as the, but the study restudy the gable end with the glass and heavy timbers, and then restudy the storefronts with glass and heavy timbers. That's what we have so far, and then we've been.
Okay. That's pretty good. I think is pretty good.
So, Mr. Chair.
What Bob said earlier was studying site utilization for reassessing the entire space.
Yes.
Restudy site planning.
Can we add that? We said reduce the zone of benefit, reduce the parking on site, with the goal to better utilize the site uses and reduce the mass of the Veracruz
To optimize site use.
Study the building program and the site utilization to get better site use and better building use. I don't know what to say. I think you got it right. Squibbling over.
And then I had comments.
About cars.
Then I had comments about restudy, was it 526, the two-story element, the balcony, was that not a strong enough concern to?
It was part of the.
Oh, it was?
As far as
I didn't hear
list.
Was it the brick wall, possibly removing that?
Yes.
Or?
You said study preserving, and I think what Richard meant was study that whether you need those masses. Wasn't that?
Okay, what we're talking about is 526, the northern building.
Yeah. Whether
We're talking about
two-story massing along here. We'd study that.
What I had said as part of my, where is it? There it is. Oh. There it is. What I had said was restudy this particular canopy at this corner. Study removing it or...
Which then reduces the mass as it feels, yeah.
Okay. And then also we want to make clear that we're not interested in preserving those extra masses on 518. We are interested in simplifying.
Or removing them.
Removing and...
Okay, so that was my question too. Thank you for going to that.
So simplify existing massing.
So on 518, let's look at that. So basically this.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think once you get into it structurally, it's going to be gone anyway. So.
I think we've cleaned up the motion. I'll second it. Oh.
Well, he's already been
I
seconded.
already seconded it. That was all under discussion. The relationship of 520 with the park, I think, is complicated. And right now, the east elevation of that building essentially has a one-story blank mass, which I can understand from the point of view of wanting to keep the building secure because of, let's just call them the denizens of the park. But I like the idea that you've got windows facing the park because that's got, we have eyes on the park in that way. Again, I just think it's a shame that, the occupants of this building can't have access to the park. That makes absolutely no sense. That alley, for all intents and purposes, is a public drive. People walk through there, they drive through there. It should be a city street. That's enough. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Yes? We still do? Yes. Okay.
We still do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay. Motion carries.
Wow.
All right.
Bit of a puzzle, Tom.
Hey, you're sorting it out.
Complex.
Okay.
Whatever happens, it's going to be a whole lot nicer than this.
Yes. It's yours.
That concludes our
Another one?
agenda for the evening. Thank you very much.